they were sending kids to our gate and giving us DVDs of, Iraqi army and Iraqi police getting their heads cut off. They were delivering heads to the gate of our AO of Iraqi police officers that we were working with. We did a lot of FID type stuff as well, as many people did. We always had shotguns with us. We would either, put buckshot or even birdshot in there. And it was so crazy at that time for like V-beds and IEDs and stuff that if vehicles got close to us, we would just start lighting that vehicle up with a shotgun, just stay away, shooting at the engine block, shooting at the windows. I don't want to say it was the beginning of the insurgency because people out there probably know the timelines of all that more than me, but that was at the time when it was like the beginning of these insurgents really organizing themselves and putting their tactics together, the IEDs and the V-beds and their ambush tactics and kind of how they were going to fight with us. That was kind of like the beginning of it.
Welcome to Mic Drop, the podcast where relevancy is irrelevant and we don't give a shit about your feelings. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, it's both an honor and a pleasure to welcome my next guest to the podcast. He spent 10 years active duty and reserve time as a Recon Marine. He's a third-degree Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt and owns BJJ Lab. He's a co-founder of Overwatch Foundation, which is a critical response to disasters in austere environments, including Ukraine, which is a big part of why we're going to be here talking today. If Scrooge McDuck and Chuck Norris had a love child, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage, Lord Killerby McLaren, a.k.a. Mark Turner.
Mike, I'm going to kill you.
I had to do that, Chet.
I love you, but I'm going to kill you, man. And his introductions are always so fantastic, and that was fantastic. Yeah. I'm gonna kill you.
Yeah, well, it'll be our secret. We won't get into it as per your request, but getting you on a technicality, we won't get into it. But I meant it.
No, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming. We've been trying to work this out for a while, and logistics and what have you has taken a bit, but I'm really stoked that you're here, and I appreciate it. I know you're a busy guy with everything you have going on, so thank you for taking the time.
Oh, again, thanks for having me. It's obviously I watched the show. You and I have been, kind of in contact for a couple of years now, helping me out with my dog and all that kind of stuff, and just got to know each other. So it's great to be able to be here and sit down and go over some of the stuff we're doing.
Yeah, amen. What's the best Scottish stereotype?
Oh, the best one.
Or most accurate?
The well-hung thing? No, I mean, most accurate. It's very... Wait a minute, there's Scottish stereotypes. What are we talking about?
There's everything stereotypes. No, I mean, to me, So I Married an Axe Murderer is...
No, I'd say the kind of... The one I hear a lot and people think, oh, that must offend you, is like being stingy with money.
Oh, yeah.
Look, we don't have a lot of money in my country. So, if you give me 2 dimes, I'm not parting with them kind of thing. So, that one's probably very accurate, I'd say.
Yeah. When's the last time you had real haggis?
Last year at the Robert Burns night, I get it imported. And you want a funny haggis story?
Yeah.
So, real haggis is illegal in the United States, right? It's against FDA regulation for some silly reason, as they do.
Same with raw milk and other dumb
right,
shit.
All of this, yeah. So when I go home, we used to do this more. Now it seems to be pretty easy to get it. But I would go to the local butchers, and when I was flying home to come back to Chicago, I would freeze the haggis the night before, and I would put the frozen haggis, the next morning when I was flying back in my dirty laundry bag.
That's appropriate.
And basically smuggle haggis into the U.S.
Oh, that's fucking great. I mean, because it's essentially entrails, right?
Yeah, sheep entrails, and then like oats and spices and different stuff boiled in a sheep's stomach.
Yeah, it sounds delicious. I've never had it. You're going to hook me up with that sometime.
I will connect you with some haggis, yeah.
What's the last book that you read and finished?
Last book that I read and finished. Well, I'm always reading the Bible, and we just kind of got finished with the yearly Torah reading there at the end of the fall festivals. So that kind of completed that year's cycle. So that would be the last.
All right. I'm going to take a quick break. I do want to let you guys know the way that you can support the show is to support our sponsors. I know some people don't like to hear ads, but that's how I do what I do for a living. So any support you can show for our gracious sponsors is much appreciated. And again, it does support the show. So thank you. What are the two key components for canine success? That's effective training and proper nutrition. Fueled by Team Dog brings those two components to your family and best friend. The perfect nutritional balance that results in a higher mental acuity, energy, overall vitality, and even an improved appearance. Every product you will find in my company's store was born from the battlefield and not from the boardroom. Let my life's work help you become your dog's hero. Do you have a specific favorite childhood memory?
I have so many, but one would be, the first time I came to the US, I remember it was obviously massive excitement coming to the US from where I'm from. And it was August, and I had never, in Scotland, if it's 70 degrees, it's a heat wave, everybody's going to die, and everybody's swimming in the ocean and all this kind of stuff. So we landed at O'Hare and got off the plane, and it must have been 85, 90 degrees, August in Chicago as it is. And I just remember stepping off that plane and feeling the heat. And it just, that's a memory that, always just kind of be stuck in my head, and that just has kicked off the rest of my life, Well,
it's a good thing you didn't come to Texas in August.
Oh, Texas is hot as well, yeah.
Oh, it's brutal. What is, on a normal day when you're in town and there's nothing out of the ordinary going on, what does your morning routine look like?
Yeah, so my morning routine changes a lot. I try, I like to have a routine, but I also don't like to be held to a routine, right? So I do switch it up a lot. Like, for instance, sometimes I will work out very early, 4, 6 in the morning kind of thing. I'll get up and work out. Sometimes I do the intermittent fasting thing where I won't eat until whatever time, right? Maybe 10, maybe noon, maybe 1 in the afternoon. I don't really have a set thing. A lot of times if I'm having privates, I'm up early. I have a couple of guys that like to train really early doing privates. So I'll just wake up, give myself a good scratch, fire some clothes on, and head over to the academy and train before anything. But one thing I do every morning when I wake up, first thing, is 2 pints of water.
Yeah. Right?
Just up, 2 pints of water. Obviously, my dog is very important for first thing in the morning, getting her going. So we'll get her out, get her fed, do a little bit of training here or there. And then it's just kind of whatever is going on that day, whether it's, work or play or whatever's happening. But yeah, I do obviously value having a set routine, but it does rotate a lot. And I don't have a rhyme or reason on when I rotate it, sometimes I really like working out late at night, and then I'll do that for 5-6 months, and then I'll be like, I'm going to start 6 a.m. my workouts, and it's very strange.
Yeah, it's for sure interesting. I know for me, I'm essentially the exact opposite, where I have a very, very set, first hour and a half, 2 hours of the morning is always the exact same for me. Mm-hmm. And if it's not, if like this morning as an example, a couple different things, family logistics wise, came up and completely threw that off. And it just throws me for a fucking loop, which isn't good.
Right.
I should be more flexible, but for me, I find that I'm the most productive when I keep a very set routine and stay in it. But, it's interesting you mentioned working out late, and I used to love working out at night.
Mm-hmm.
I've always hated working out early in the morning, but super early. Once it's 9 or whatever, I don't mind. But at 4, I hate working out that early. But But now, like if I try to work out early, it's a motherfucker for me to get to sleep. If I work, like if I train jiu-jitsu at night, like 8 to 9 lesson or class or whatever, like dude, I can't fucking sleep till
a lot
like
of
2.
people say that at the academy. Yeah. They're the same way. Yeah, they're like, I go home from training and I try to wind down and just can't. You know?
Yeah, I have a hard time doing it. But do you, before you train jiu-jitsu, do you have a specific routine warm-up wise, or do you just kind of get right into it?
No, I mean, it depends. Our academy, we are kind of at a size now and a functionality where we have classes multiple times a day, 7 days a week. And we have kind of built it in as a science that the classes are different depending on the day, the time, for specific reasons. And some of that is just, this is a beginner's class, this is an advanced class, but, it goes a little more in depth in that as well. And, we used to do, or traditionally, and some people still do this, you do some kind of like, butt kicker workout or some stretching program or something, and then get into the technique. A lot of times with us, it depends on what we're doing, but we may do different drills, like specific drills to get warmed up and just start moving, and hey, start off at 30% and now we're going to ramp it up and ramp it up. And then sometimes I know basically by what I'm going to be teaching, just the movement and the actual technical portion will be the warm up.
Yeah.
It really all depends. And again, I think having that set, the old traditional 20-minute butt kicker warm up, 2 techniques, and then sparring till the end of class. I think if you're still training like that, and if you're an instructor still teaching like that, you're really missing out on so much more development in jiu-jitsu, because, to me, it just that can't work all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got to be tailored to whoever your students are and what their goals are, I assume. I can only assume that at this point for you, like, days or sessions that you train just for you are pretty slim. Like, are you usually going in and teaching, or?
Yeah, so I'll teach my classes, but I train in my classes as well. I train with the guys, and I also have guys that I train with on the side, especially during COVID. That was massive. It's in the beginning of COVID, when we all thought the zombies were coming and all this, and we didn't know what it was. We obviously closed down the academy, but I was still training. I had a small group of guys that I would either train one-on-one with them, or we'd come in as a very small group and train together. So I get my time. The good thing is I'm lucky enough right now where if I call somebody and was like, hey, let's go train tomorrow at an off time, people will say yes to me.
Yeah.
So that's very beneficial, especially with my schedule and everything we have going on. But yeah, I jump in and train with the guys as well during classes. You have to. I like training with all our guys. So.
Yeah. One thing for the listener of note that I'm impressed by, or I think is just really cool, is that you've trained under Damian Maia for a long time, right?
Yeah.
Who is one of the best in the world, or one of the best to ever do it. Which speaks volumes to your level, but. Great stuff. Check it out. BJJ Lab, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Up in Chicago. Great group of guys, and can't recommend them enough if you're anywhere near that area. But all right, so you're originally from Scotland. Tell me, if you could, kind of what your childhood was like, and that whole process between growing up, part of your childhood there, and then ultimately coming to the United States.
Yeah, so I grew up in a very small, kind of poor, former mining village. It was very busy and prevalent up until kind of everything happened in the UK and they started closing down the mines, and very similar to what you see here in certain places, West Virginia, Kentucky, that kind of thing. When they close down a mine, it kind of puts a lot of barriers in on that area. A lot of Scotland's it's very strange. It's an incredibly beautiful place, as you can imagine, and as you've probably seen. But there's a lot of socialism ideology there. There's people there that understand that they can receive more money by not working than if they actually went out and got a job. There's many people that, you know, like I said, our village, there's not a lot going on there. It's great people and beautiful. But like, you have people that would just stay there rather than like, I have to get out here and go do something.
Yeah.
You know, so that's kind of the place I'm from. And we have a massive family. My mother has the children. My grandmother and grandfather had 7 children.
Oh, wow.
And then, you know, and we all live in the same area. So that was huge for me growing up. My mother and father had split up when I was very young, and my father like completely left. So it was kind of like we had this village raising us, and we were very close, obviously. Always had a father figure and my uncles and all that kind of stuff. And still to this day, my family's very, very close. The extended family's very close.
Do most of them still live there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
You go back pretty regular?
Yeah, I mean, before COVID, I was going back 1-2 times a year. I mean, you know, again, thank God for Jiu-Jitsu. I go there now and I teach Jiu-Jitsu, you know.
Nice.
And, you know, we've done some stuff with some of the UFC guys that from Scotland that are in the UFC now, guys like Stevie Ray, Paul Craig, those guys, being able to go over there and work with them and do seminars at different academies there is great, because I get to pass on Jiu-Jitsu to people in Scotland and I get to be home as well. Yeah. So that's been fantastic. So yeah, grew up there. Didn't really, I mean, I was really young when we moved over here. I was 10. I probably would have followed in my uncle's footsteps. He was like 30 years in the Black Watch, which is a Royal Battalion in the British Army. It's like our local Scottish regiment, and very historic. Obviously, they had a big part in, you know, the Revolutionary War here and all this kind of stuff. You know, he did a lot of tours over in Northern Ireland during the Troubles and all that. And just, I always remember him coming back from whatever he was doing, and just, I probably would have followed in his footsteps if I would have stayed there. And, you know, later he actually influenced me to join the Marine Corps when that decision came. So, yeah, everything was great in Scotland. You know, I mean, we didn't have a ton of money. My mother worked always multiple jobs, but my brother and I, you know, she basically lived to make sure we had everything that we could have. And she started working for a corporation there. It was an international telecommunications company. It was called Andrew Corporation. It doesn't exist anymore. Some of you may have seen like those satellite dishes with the red lightning bolt on them. Yeah. There's still a bunch of them kicking around. That was the company. And there was a small factory near where we lived in Scotland, and she worked as like a purchaser or something in the office. And she was doing a lot of communications with the facility in Chicago. She would go over on work trips and all that, and then it came up to where we could go over and stay for 18 months or whatever. And it was like the talk of the town, and what an opportunity. And you know, I don't know how old she was at the time. I have to go back and do the math, but let's say she's like mid-30s, single mother, 2 children, now just going to go to America where she doesn't know anybody and figure this out, right? And start this new life. And it was only supposed to be for 18 months, and it kept getting extended and all this kind of stuff. And you know, we kind of got more ingrained in America and all this, and we were able to stay permanently. She got remarried here in the States and all that. My stepfather's an incredible human, probably one of the best people you or I would ever meet. And it's just been, but our whole thing, one thing she did that was always now so special to me was every year, like the week after school got finished in the summer, she punted us back to Scotland for the whole summer. Oh, nice. And so, you know, and that kept us connected. I mean, I still have friends in Scotland that I'm very close to that, you know, I got my diapers changed with. Yeah. And we're still, you know, very close. And I just always felt like whenever I go home, everybody, it's like I just was gone for 2 weeks kind of thing. Wow, that's cool. Yeah, it's a very big part of my life and a very cool part of my life, you know.
What's the name of the town you're from?
So it's a tiny little mining village called Blingery. It's in like the Benarty area of a place on the east coast called Fife.
Oh, okay. And you know, ballpark with the population?
So there's like 4 little villages all together. It's probably, I mean, less than 10,000 people.
Yeah. And food-wise, growing up, I guess contrasting it to how you ate as a 10-year-old when you moved here, what were some typical meals or foods that you ate growing up?
Different soups, mince and potatoes, everything with potatoes. There was like takeout food, like, fish and chip shop type stuff, or Indian food actually is a big British takeout food. But if you wanted to go to McDonald's, that was like a massive treat. And that was like a one time a year thing. Like, it's Mike Ritland's birthday, we're all going to McDonald's kind of
Fucking
thing.
A.
I mean, and you're talking it was 35, 40-minute drive to the closest McDonald's.
Yeah.
Movie theater, same kind of thing. Like, to the closest big town, it took a little bit to get there where they had some of that stuff. Now there's more stuff kind of built out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I just remember always watching, American movies, obviously, especially like movies, the big thing.
Yeah.
We didn't have too much like American television or anything, but movies all the time. And then when we finally came over here, it's like, oh, look at the pizza, look at this, look at that. There's McDonald's everywhere. Like,
there's fat fucks everywhere. Yeah. Big Christmas traditions?
I mean, there is the holidays, especially like the New Year time is very special in Scotland. It kind of goes back to the whole like, oh, you made it through this year kind of thing. Like, and obviously there's a big connection in Scotland with Robert Burns, who, wrote Auld Lang Syne, which to most Americans, that's that New Year song that everybody knows. So yeah, the New Year time was always very big. I mean, from that kind of Christmas through New Year time, everybody's off for basically like weeks or about a month, and it's just parties and everybody being together. I
mean, I know you're Jewish, but I know that block of time, almost in all Western cultures is kind of a, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, but look here, I wasn't Jewish then. Becoming Jewish is kind of what helped me deal with a lot of the military baggage and stuff that I had. Yeah, I mean, I had to turn to something and didn't really like the Western Christian way of looking at the Bible, and kind of just said to myself, like, I want to see, okay, how did the kind of original people do this thing?
Yeah.
Like, like, I don't want to after, and you can see, like, I'm a history, we were talking about that, I'm a history nut, and I started kind of looking at the history of religion, history of the Bible, and could see like, well, okay, that's only in there now because this guy changed it this year, and you can clearly, it's well documented. So that's not a thing, right? Yeah. I'm not going to, so, okay, what happened before that? What happened before that? And just kind of traced it back to, okay, well, this is how they originally, if I'm going to follow something, right? And I don't care what you follow, but if you're going to follow something, try to follow it to the most kind of aligned way that it was originally intended.
Yeah. What at what age did you?
This was after I was doing some contracting and stuff, and just having a hard time with like, all like as you do when you get out of the military or get done doing that kind of cool guy stuff. Just had a lot of problems with like PTSD, anger issues, all this kind of stuff, and just kind of was like, look, I need something to help me like change this, because it's just not going well. And, that being able to obsess about that and connect to that and study that really helped me, it gave me a channel.
That's fascinating. I guess the, like from a life path standpoint, did you grow up with a Christian influence, or was it just kind of
So in Scotland, everything's either Catholic or Protestant, and there's still a very kind of rough divide there, even all the way down to the football teams that we support, and schools you attend and all this, and everybody will say they're Catholic or Protestant, but nobody fucking goes to church. Like, nobody does any of that, right? Yeah. But there's such a strong divide there. And then when we moved to this country and my mother met my stepfather, he grew up Catholic, like Irish Catholic. And so it was like, no, you know what I mean? No. And I remember he used to try and get us to go to church and all that on a Sunday morning, and my brother and I would like run away. Yeah. Like, we're not going, right? We like run away for that morning or something. And so then he kind of said, well, look, I want the family to be connected to something. And he started looking and kind of went the born again Christian route for a while. And then he kind of had the same thing before me and was kind of like, well, that was the other thing too. He went to the Catholic Church because he was talking about marrying my mother, and they basically were like, no, because she's divorced and has 2 children. Like, we don't really support that. And so that's when he kind of was like, all right, well, that's not right. You know, like, I love this woman and I love her children, and you're saying I can't get married because of something, whatever. So he started exploring different stuff, but then again, once he, you know, did the born again Christian thing for a while, kind of said the same thing. Well, this is more like modern and isn't really like what they're saying is not what this book says.
Yeah.
So how do you square that circle, right? And he kind of took that journey before me, and then, you know, I started looking into it, and it just made like a huge impact on me. And I'm not perfect. I mean, look, I still have problems here and there, as we all do, but like that definitely pulled me out of a rough time and a rough place, and you know, and it still gives me something to align myself to. And look, I could be completely wrong, and maybe trying to get back to the beginning of that text and figure out from there how to live might not be the right way, but at least at the end of the day, if I have to stand in front of somebody, I can say I did the best I could with what I had.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't listen to this guy. I didn't listen to that guy. I just kind of took the text, I learned the language, and I, you know, plugged in and tried to figure out the original intent.
Yeah. Wow, that's cool and impressive at the same time. It's neat. When you first moved over here at 10, was it a big culture shock?
Oh, massive, yeah.
What were kind of some of the things that really slapped you in the nuts?
It honestly felt like a different world, you know, like the people were different. How people spoke to each other was different, and interacted was different. I mean, here in America, and I don't care where you live in America, it seems like you need a car to be able to do anything.
Yeah.
Like, you can't function in America in most places without a vehicle. And in Scotland, everybody just walked everywhere, or the public transportation is really, really good, you know. The food was different, and just everything was different. But again, I remember being in school and really liking learning about the American history.
Yeah.
You know, about the Native Americans and about the Revolutionary War, and just kind of the history of America that they teach in school always just fascinated me.
I found the same thing in terms of, you know, being a huge history dork that way, but it's interesting that you took a big liking to, you know, the history of the new country that you're living in, to that degree, I guess. Were you into history back home also?
No. Well, I mean, yes. I mean, look, we used to play hide and seek in a graveyard that had tombstone markings from the 1300s on it. So, I mean, when you're in Scotland, you're surrounded by history.
Yeah.
You know, over the mountain where I live, there's like a big lake. Like, this is Loch Leven, if anybody wants to look it up. There's an island in that where there's a castle where Mary Queen of Scots was imprisoned for a while. I mean, you're just, you know, Edinburgh Castle is not too far away, half an hour away. You know, you could literally go, if I took you to Edinburgh Castle, we can stand in the room where King James was born.
Wow.
You know, I mean, you're surrounded by history in Scotland. So it's not like here, I think, to be around history, you have to learn it formally. Yeah. And then you'll learn about, like, whatever it is, whether it's Gettysburg or this or that, then you can go and see these places. And like, in Scotland, you're just in it.
Yeah.
You know, you're just there. So so I always had that connection to history. And then coming here, yeah, I mean, I did want to learn about the country and naturally gravitated to, okay, so what's the deal with this place? Yeah. Like, what's the history, you know?
Yeah. To me, the fascinating thing with America is, like, nothing is that old by comparison. Right. You know, you know, it's a couple hundred years at the most. You know, and in a lot of cases, even newer than that. But Did you play sports once you came to America in American high school?
Yeah, we like basketball, but like obviously I'm not the tallest guy. I'm like 5'9", so like, you know, as good as you can be on the playground and in the rec center, you're never gonna go anywhere, kind of thing. And so tried baseball, and I love the sport of baseball. I love the technicality of it, right? I love that. Like, people think baseball's boring. I'm like, how in the world? Like, every pitch means something, you know, and the different counts and that battle between the batter and the pitcher and the situational stuff is fascinating to me. But I never really got into playing baseball, and then I got into wrestling, and really liked wrestling, was really good at wrestling, and you know, did that and wrestled in high school until I found jiu-jitsu.
All right, so as you know, Mudwater's been a staunch supporter of the Mic Drop podcast for a while now, and they're now running a Veterans Day promotion where they're going to be donating 10% of the customer revenue to Heroic Hearts Project, which is an organization that directly helps veterans process their military trauma and PTSD by providing access to psychedelic treatment, which, you know, over the last few years, we've had a number of guests on the show that, you know, have really, you know, kind of testified to the fact that their lives have been changed by a lot of this treatment. So, you know, I'm very appreciative of Mudwater for this new campaign that they're doing, really spearheading the giving back to the kind of the psychological side of trauma that a lot of combat veterans deal with. They've got a Rise blend, which is a coffee alternative. It's got 4 adaptogenic mushrooms in it, as well as some herbs with a fraction of caffeine. It's a fraction of a cup of coffee's worth of caffeine. So you get that same energy and lack of tiredness from a cup of coffee without the crash at the end. Each ingredient was added for a specific purpose. You've got cacao and chai for mood and that microdose of caffeine. You've got lion's mane mushrooms for alertness. You've got cordyceps to help support physical performance, chaga and reishi to support the immune system, turmeric for soreness, and then cinnamon for the antioxidants. For me, my jam with that is stevia vanilla drops and a splash of heavy cream. That's how I like to drink it, and that's how I used to drink coffee, and now how I've replaced it with Mudwater. It's fantastic stuff. I can't recommend it enough. It's not hard on your stomach the way coffee is, but it gives you that same ritual and kind of, you know, almost nostalgic morning cup of joe that everybody tends to dig. So if you go to Mudwater, that's mudwtr.com/Mike, you will get 15% off. And again, I want to encourage you guys, you know, by supporting the sponsors, that's the best way to support the Mic Drop podcast and give us the ability to bring you these guests show after show and get everybody's story out. So again, that's Mudwater, mudwtr.com/Mike, and use that code Mike for 15% off. And did you, when you moved here to the United States, was it to the Chicago area initially? Yep. Yeah, so you've been there the whole time. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did you go to state or anything in high school wrestling?
Yeah, like I, you know, placed here or there. You know, I think if I would have known, like I just wrestled in school, if I would have known more about it's kind of like you know, going back and looking at my entire life, especially like military career as well, you start saying like, if I would have known then what I know now, you know, I would have done more like the club type stuff, more of like found a wrestling academy, because I was pretty good. You know, I won a bunch of tournaments. I, you know, won a lot of matches, and I remember the first match I lost, I was like in such disbelief that I lost, you know, and I think if I would have found those other, like now you look at the sports and it's like, okay, if you play volleyball or you wrestle now, it's like you wrestle. Yeah. And, you know, these kids that play this, that, and the next thing, they get passed by now. It's almost like you have to focus and you have to, you know, do all your off-season stuff. You have to be plugged into different clubs when it's not season and all of that. And
it's a full-time gig.
Yeah, and I just didn't know that at the time, you know, and then I met a guy who had been training jiu-jitsu. This was back in 1997, right? And I had met a guy who had been training jiu-jitsu for 6 months. you know what that's like. 6 months, you still don't know how to tie your belt kind of thing. And this was 1997 jiu-jitsu. This was not like nowadays. And he's like, hey, do you want to roll and stuff? I train jiu-jitsu, and I'm thinking he's some karate guy. So I'm like, okay. I take him down, and then he starts armbarring me and triangling me. And I just remember being like, what the fuck is this? Like, what is this, you know? And then he starts kind of telling me and showing me some stuff, and I'm like, it's like wrestling, but better. Like, it's like wrestling with a real end. Yeah. You know?
Yeah, with an actual game plan behind it.
Yeah, right? And then I just was hooked from there, you know.
And so did you go full tilt right from there, like into it? Or because I mean, there weren't a lot of options.
No, there were not. I mean, and we were talking about Chicago now is like one of the hubs for jiu-jitsu. There's academies everywhere, you know. And at that time for jiu-jitsu, there really was only 2 places. And they were both in the city, and I lived in the suburbs. So what we did was we had a very small group, like 3-4 guys, and and a lot of these guys were like former martial artists that did whatever, whether it's Kempo or Kung Fu, whatever, that had stumbled across jiu-jitsu and were trying to figure it out. And, you know, I remember me and the guy who got me into jiu-jitsu, we would train on carpet just like this with it was before they even made white gis. They were all the unbleached gis, right? And everybody's gi was like 4 sizes too big for them. And we would just train all night. And when we were so gassed and just needed a break, we'd watch UFC 1, 2, or 3, couple of fights, and then back on the mat training again. And you know, and at the time I did really well in school. I always got like straight A's, or I'd get like the occasional B. And my mother always let me just take days off. And I was like, all right, I'll take either Mondays or Fridays off. You know, so I usually always had like a 4-day school week kind of thing, unless something was going on in school that I wanted to be there for, and we would use those days and just train. And I remember just being obsessed with it. And then we started going to the city a few days a week to train. But you know, I was 17 years old, and although I wrestled and stuff, I mean, you know, you could say like I wrestled in high school. I don't care who you are wrestling in high school, especially back then. Now I'm training jiu-jitsu in the city with a bunch of grown men, like real men, you know, and so that really helped me realize like look, you can do this. It really made me appreciate jiu-jitsu even at that level, because I could be on the bottom with a grown man who was much bigger than me, much more physically developed, and I could still do well, you know. And we started doing that, and that's kind of what got me into really, you know, getting into jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. And so at what point during that time period were you like, fuck, I'm going to join the Marines?
Yeah, so I was in all 4 years of high school. I was in JROTC, and I was on the drill team. I was the drill team commander, and we, you know, and the rifle team commander, and we won a bunch of competitions. And it was very interesting, because when I was in 8th grade, the high school was beginning this JROTC program. And I remember they said to us so I was the first class that could go all 4 years, JROTC. It was a brand new program when I was a freshman. And I remember they came in and they said like, hey, you can do this in high school. It's kind of like, they really didn't describe it too well, you know, like it's kind of like a military thing, but it's going to take place of your gym class. And I, you know, everybody likes gym class. So I was like, all right, well, we'll see, you know. And so I did it. I said, if I don't like it, I can always switch back, kind of thing. And I'm so glad I did it, because like there were 2 guys. There was a lieutenant colonel who just kind of recently passed away. He was a big influence on me. And then there was a senior master sergeant, which is like a E8 or E9, I think, in the Air Force. Please don't blow me up in the comments if I don't remember my Air Force ranks. They don't even know their ranks. No, I love the Air Force. And they just were very good mentors, very good leaders of the program. And then they brought in like a technical sergeant later as the program grew. And it just was a really cool thing. And I got involved in the drill team and the rifle team. And, you know, then I kind of decided like, I want to join the military. And, you know, went to my uncle and said, well, what should I do? And he said, well, you know, you could join the Army or whatever, but he's like, I've been able to do a lot of different training with the Marines, and, you know, you should take a look at the Marine Corps. And I actually got accepted to the Citadel and VMI and was looking at becoming an officer. And then I was kind of like, well, if I go to one of these academies, it's going to take me 4 years before I'm in the military, like proper. I was like, I want to go now, right? So 17 years old, my parents actually signed for me. I did a year in the delayed entry program before I went to MCRD San Diego in June of 2000.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I mean, I loved the whole, you know, we had to wear our JROTC uniform to school. We did a bunch of like, you know, funeral presentation type stuff. We did a lot of color guard stuff, all the, you know, I love drill. Like I love drill. I love drilling with a rifle. And I liked having that team, you know, that the guys that we'd work every day after school on all the different movements and the different kind of routines that we would do. And that was actually very good, because when I got to MCRD, they put me as the guide because I had drill experience. Yeah. Right. And I was the guide all the way up, like basically all the way up until the end. And I was already getting promoted. Like I came out of boot camp as a E3, E2. I came out. So I already had my promotion. And what they did was the honor grad also got promoted, or the guy, whoever was the guide of that platoon, and then the honor grad of the company as well would get a promotion in there as well. But I already had that, and I remember I got fired, and it was like such a stupid reason as well. But and then I got moved back to like first squad leader, and it was so obviously that guy could then finish in that spot and get him promoted. And I understand that now, right? Yeah. Like that's a cool move to do, to hook that guy up. But yeah, at the time I'm like, wait a minute, I want to finish this thing out, you know. And then again at Marine Corps boot camp, drill is another big part of basic training, and I loved it. Yeah.
And did you know kind of early on or right away that you wanted to go the recon route, or?
I mean, I think I wanted to. I mean, I started off in the infantry, you know, and I had such a good ASVAB score. I remember the recruiters trying to get me to do this and do that, and you know, fill all those quotas of the stuff you need a high ASVAB, and I'm like, nope, I want to be, you know, in the infantry, and you know, and I think I always thought that way. Like I wanted to end up, I just wanted to keep doing stuff. And one thing I'll say, and I say this now, and me and a bunch of recon guys actually were just talking about this when we were recently over in Eastern Europe. And I don't know if it was the same for you guys, but I think what the military lacks, especially in, you know, when you eventually do get to, you know, something like whether it's SEALs or Green Berets or recon or anything like that, and maybe just in general, there's not really a good career development program where you come in as an 18-year-old and they sit you down and they're like, look, what do you really want to do with this? You know, like, and it's outside of your unit, it's outside of your platoon leadership. And it's like, okay, what do you want to get out of this? And where are your interests? And, you know, because I'm sure you've seen it, guys will go and they're like, hey, I want to go do this. No.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, the military is terrible about, you know, setting their guys up on paths or even educating them as to what's available. I mean, it's really just kind of a dumb leading the blind scenario in a lot of ways that way. But
yeah, and I kind of, I didn't have that, you know. Again, now I wish I could have had some of that, just for that direction, because 18 years old, you know, we talk about all the time. Like we talk about on the college side, like 18 years old, you should go do some stuff, get some experience, then go to college, because college really doesn't help you develop or anything like that. Well, okay, join the military. Well, that's not really that much better for an 18-year-old. You go, you're 18 years old, you check into a unit, and, you know, nobody cares. People either want to haze you, or they're, you know, their first thing is not like, okay, here's a young pup that we can get on a good path and do. It's like, hey, go pick this up over there, go do this over there. And so I think the military really lacks that. They'll probably say they have programs, you know, but you see it on the other side too. You see it on the getting out side. I remember you come back from a deployment and it's like, you've done some crazy stuff as a 20-year-old, 18-year-old, 19-year-old, whatever it was. And it's like, they put you for a week. You have to go do all your medical tests. You go see the head shrinker and all this kind of stuff. But you're just saying whatever you need to say to get on Libo.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we're doing this until 1300. Get through all your stuff, and then you're free for the rest of the day. You're just waiting to get home to see your family or to do this. And they should know. And I get it. They could say, yeah, but we have these programs in place. But you should know that the 18, 19, 25-year-old is going to just try and skate around that and say whatever he needs to say to go have some beer, you know? And it's obviously a lot better now, I hope, with guys getting out.
I think it is, but I think it's still lacking for sure, But so the path going in, I mean, did you, like, what transpired between when you graduated boot camp, you go into infantry, and then how long before you actually went and did the recon thing?
It was a while. Because it wasn't until, so I was going to like language school for Arabic and ran into a bunch of guys there that were at 3rd Force. And I started like training with them, working out with them, keeping in touch with them. And I wanted to transfer to that unit. I had already passed the NDOC and stuff and kind of just asked if I could go. And it was like, at that time we were on a workup or whatever. And it just kind of was like, no.
Yeah.
Right. And so I actually had to use it like at a time of like getting out to be like, okay, well then I'll go back and do this if I can go. And then, so that's how I ended up going. And, my whole military career, I had a blast. I just think that we got to do some cool stuff and be a part of, obviously, the global war on terror and did stuff in Iraq that, was very worthwhile. I mean, we got to be a part of the first democratic Iraqi elections and protecting voting sites for that and seeing people coming in to vote for the first time under mortar fire.
Yeah.
Was just like something I'm like, this is cool, and regardless of what happens in that country from then on, it's like at that time, those people understood that they could participate in like a free and open election, and they didn't care what was raining down from the sky. They wanted to go do that.
Which is funny, especially now with these midterm elections coming up. I mean, by the time this airs, it should be right around then, but maybe a little after, but you hear about voter suppression here, and you're just like,
yeah, there's no mortars getting dropped on polling places in Texas, Yeah,
I mean, not that that there isn't legitimate concerns with election security across the board on both sides. I think it's a legitimate concern that it's done right. I certainly am not minimizing that, but to hear voter suppression being accused of is fucking irritating when you've been to places like that.
Well, the other thing too is, I mean, there's stories like that, and people could easily say, yeah, well, this isn't Iraq, but I mean, you could look at voter registration numbers, you can look at voter turnouts, in any demographic, and the numbers are constant. Every election, they're going up, right? Yeah. Of people, so it's like it just doesn't work. Yeah.
So your first trip to Iraq, actually, let me take one step back. You were just in a regular Marine infantry unit when September 11th happened?
Yeah, I actually, I was in regular infantry unit when September 11th had kicked off. Yeah, I was doing actually some school stuff, some like actual like college courses.
Did you guys respond at all? Did you get spun up to do anything in the 6 months afterwards?
No. I can't remember exactly how organizationally the Marine Corps responded. But we were not on the end that was going right away. When I first went, it was to Iraq was 2004.
Okay. And what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, it was very, very heavy, as far as engagements went. we were leaving the wire every day. We kind of were doing a lot of stuff that was very similar to the CAP platoon stuff in Vietnam, where you're out in the community trying to build relationships, looking to pick fights, and just trying to like really get involved and creative in the battle space. A lot of the grunt units were just doing the basic kind of security patrols, and which were very valuable in our AO. We were south of Baghdad in like Mahmadiyah area, and it was a lot of so there was an area there, Yusufiyah, that had never been touched when we got there since the initial invasion, and it just was a hornet's nest. And it just kind of it was pretty heavy. I mean, I think the battalion there lost 16 guys, which was, it was crazy. It was very, very active, and just nonstop. I mean, it was like 7-month deployment. It was every day something was going on.
Yeah. Was there, when you guys first got there, was there a kind of a commander's intent type of mission brief of saying, here's why we're in this area and this is what we're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, it was. I mean, obviously that wasn't, it probably was transferred to me. I don't remember exactly. The battalion commander was an absolute savage. His name was Mark Smith, Lieutenant Colonel. He passed away of cancer, I believe, since then. But he was an absolute savage, and he was a Marines officer, and he just wanted to take it to the enemy. He wanted to clear out that AO. And initially we were told the whole hearts and minds thing, and that kind of went out the window. Yeah. And when we got there, and it just, I think that mission is a good mission. I think it's good on TV. I think it looks good. You can sell that to the public, but I think that you can't control that mission. I think if you're in an area that will accept that from you, then everything can go well there. But if you're just in an area and you're trying to put that round peg in a square hole,
yeah,
you kind of have to pivot off of that and shift fire, immediately, because it was. I mean, look, they were sending kids to our gate and giving us DVDs of Iraqi army and Iraqi police getting their heads cut off and all this kind of stuff. They were delivering heads to the gate of our AO of Iraqi police officers that we were working with. We did a lot of FID type stuff as well, as many people did, working with those guys. And, it turned out the sergeant major of the Iraqi army battalion, I guess you would call it, he was actually playing both sides and stuff. So, I mean, it was a wild time.
Yeah. Do you remember the first legit gunfight you got into?
Yeah, we were. So we would go out in four trucks, and the way we were set up was it basically was a squad size element. We were, and we would have different attachments to us and everything, but it was a squad size element. And our gun truck setup was a 50 cal in front, a 249 in the second vehicle. We had trained to have a Mark 19 in the third vehicle, but obviously that doesn't work, right? You can't be driving around Iraqi villages lighting things up with a Mark 19 every time somebody tries shooting at you. So we had another 240 in that vehicle and then a 50 cal in the back. And I was always the gunner in the third vehicle, kind of was my spot. And so we were driving, can't remember if it was MSR Jackson or Tampa, a lot going on in the head, but one of those kind of MSRs, and we were just driving. And I always had like a radio in one ear and I had my headphones in the other ear. And back then it was like, you had just, it wasn't even you couldn't even have your phone with all your music on it back then, right? It was like an MP3 player kind of thing. So I always had something going on in one ear and then everything else on the other ear.
What music were you listening to?
So
fucking Celine Dion?
No, so listen, I always did this. Yeah, it almost was like that, right? So just with everything going on, I remember when we first showed up, I found a Harry Potter book.
Dude, that's awesome.
On my bunk, right? And it was the first one. And I started reading that book, and it was just so different than what we were doing. I think it really kind of helped balance everything
Brought out the inner child.
So I was listening to, and don't comment, people, right? I was listening to like Jason Mraz and John Mayer and like stuff like that, you know?
Shit that's totally contrasted.
Yes.
That makes sense.
And I mean, I, you know, full disclosure, I like that kind of music anyway, but like, you know, that's what I was, but it's funny. It's like, you're in this crazy environment, and I was in, you know, gunfights, pulling my trigger with Jason Mraz singing some ballad in my ear, you know?
That's fucking great.
And sometimes I would knock the headphone out, and sometimes I wouldn't though. I would just leave it in. But yeah, we were just driving, and we kind of got, you know, ambushed from the left as we were, you know, and you're going down a highway, like picture like an American interstate, and we could go as kind of as fast as we wanted to or needed to. The roads were not busy or anything on those main supply routes.
Radar detectors.
Yeah. And so we start taking fire, and I just remember like between the sound of being in the open air, you know, up in the turret, and the sound of whoever was singing in my ear, I'm like, what the heck is that, right? And it's very funny. It's almost like I could feel it more than I could hear it. You know, and I don't know how close the rounds were to me. They weren't pinging close by my head or anything like that, you know, but it was very weird. It was almost like you could feel you were being shot at more than you could hear it or see it. And then I'm kind of thinking like, all right, are we getting shot at? Like, what's going on here? And I looked down, and I could see kind of like the right shoulder of the driver, the left shoulder of the vehicle commander, and then the two guys sitting in there, and they kind of just were like, nothing going on, you know, they were just kind of cruising down the road. And then I look, and then I started to see all the flashes, you know, and what they did was they kind of had these palm groves that were off the main interstates, as we would kind of equate it to. And they would just set up these quick little hasty ambushes, and they did all kinds of stuff. Everybody knows the stories. They could link these ambushes to IEDs. They could set off an IED and then ambush. They had their tactics. But this was just, they were taking pop shots on us on an ambush, and I just remember like swinging that turret around and, you know, getting on that trigger and you know, and then it just kicked off from there. And you know, we did so much training on being in vehicles and dismounting and being able to react to contact. It just, that's one thing, you know, to me, and whether it's jiu-jitsu or any kind of tactics or even today, if you're at home and you're into, you know, concealed carry and all this, training and technique is everything.
Yeah.
Right. And repetition and dry fire and just all those hours at Camp Pendleton of contact left when you're in a vehicle and who does what and who goes where and how to react and where to react was just, you know, that kind of training is invaluable. The same as like anything else, kicking a door in or something, you know, like you do that 10,000 times to the point where you're bored of it, you know. Yeah. And I always tell the students now in the academy and stuff, and when we do some different classes that we do, tactical classes and stuff with the students, and even in Ukraine, it's like, look, you want to get good with this stuff, you need to do it so much to where it's boring.
Yeah. One of the things, I mean, same thing with dog training is, you know, one of the kind of ways I like to phrase it is that, you know, for the dog especially, because they don't realize that they're being trained. And so, you know, the trainer has to even kind of ante up an extra notch in that regard and be perfect so that you're getting the repetitions out of the dog. But I think that, you know, the way that I like to look at it is that you do something so many times, or you perform so many repetitions that it stops becoming a choice and becomes a reaction.
Yeah.
You know, and once a command equals a reaction from a dog without thought, then that's when training is not finished, but has taken place, and the dog is actually trained.
Yeah.
But, you know, and there's so many things: shooting, jiu-jitsu, tactics, dog training. You know, fuck being a chef. You know, like certain techniques on how to fold fucking scrambled eggs over properly so you don't burn them. Like it's all the same.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, you know, they want to get more into the doing and less into the actual training.
Yeah.
For the doing.
Well, I think, you know, the reality of it is in all of those circumstances, the drilling and the repetitions are boring by comparison. I would say with shooting and jiu-jitsu especially, is that, everybody wants to roll, everybody wants to fucking shoot. They don't want to do 3,000 of the exact same, procedural, movements without a satisfying ending,
Yeah.
and I think that's really the gist of it, is just most people don't want to fucking put that time in, but it just makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So going back to that time, did you guys, was it a heavy engagement, or was it?
Yeah, I mean, we returned fire, and they actually were ambushing us from a good kind of environment. It was like, think of, try and paint the picture a little bit. Think of a highway, then you have like ditches on each side that led into a field, right? And the way they have the fields there for the irrigation that they use, there's these little kind of channels. So it's kind of difficult to get a vehicle through there if they're on the other side shooting at you. And they were in this palm grove behind this kind of hill shooting at us. So we returned fire and, assaulted through the best we can, and they just broke contact.
Yeah.
And then it was, I can't remember exactly, my head's all mashed up. I can't remember exactly at the end if we, I wish I could remember this now. I can't remember if we just continued on or if we actually just went back to a fob at that point and just kind of debriefed, because that was our first engagement. I want to say we ended up just going back.
Yeah. As you guys know, health and fitness is a big part of my daily routine and my lifestyle. I have a number of guests that come on that, that we talk about all sorts of things, health and fitness related, diet, nutrition, et cetera. I started taking athletic greens a few months ago here for that reason, is that it's a all-encompassing vitamin and mineral supplement, 75 vitamins and minerals. It's lifestyle friendly, whether you do keto, paleo, vegan. It's dairy-free, gluten-free, less than 1 gram of sugar. There's no GMOs or nasty chemicals. There's no artificial anything in it. And it's just very nutrient dense and gives you that supplementation that you need to combat cold and flu season coming up, to bolster your immune system and just help with a healthy lifestyle. Right now, the subscription, if you sign up for it, comes with a year's supply of vitamin D, which again is crucial to immune support, as well as 5 on-the-go packets with that first purchase. Whether you want to invest in your health or just supplement an already existing protocol that you have, Athletic Greens has been a phenomenal staple that I've added into my regimen, and I couldn't be happier to be working with them. If you want in on that deal, go to athleticgreens.com/mic drop. And they do a phenomenal job at all the things that health and fitness wise need to be done on a daily basis. So check them out. Go to athleticgreens.com/mic drop, and they will hook you up with that special deal.
Were most of the engagements that you had on that 04 Iraq deployment vehicle mounted engagements, or did you?
No, there were 3 or basically 2 main towns that we ended up having to fight for and take over and stuff. The one when it was Yusufiyah, we actually did the old school Marine Corps thing, and humped there. I can't remember how many miles it was, but humped there all night to get there because we didn't want to have a big kind of vehicle footprint there when we initially went into the town. But I mean, my team and what we did and how we operated, we did a lot in vehicles, and we were all over the place. From where we were, we would go up into Baghdad, and we'd be driving around the streets there, and we always had shotguns with us, and we would either put buckshot or even birdshot in there. And it was so crazy at that time for V-beds and IEDs and stuff, especially the V-bed threat was very high and very crazy and was killing a lot of people, that if vehicles got close to us, we would just start lighting that vehicle up with a shotgun, just stay away, shooting at the engine block, shooting at the windows, just to it kind of was that mentality of okay, there's ROEs, and I get that. I get if we're in traffic, that guy may not be paying attention, and he may just be looking like he's going to drive into us. But you could also have a freaking few 155 shells in there wired to blow. And I'm not here, we're not here to ask questions and to see. We need to stop that car, and we were very aggressive the whole deployment, and we were allowed to be at that time, and we took advantage of that. But yeah, it was heavy fighting. It was it's the stuff that you think it's going to be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's kind of what you imagined going over there, how it was going to pan out.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know, right? Yeah. I didn't know, and yeah, it was heavy. It was a good time, and just busy, just so busy. We did so much when we were doing a lot of direct action stuff. We were doing this work with, we'd go and meet with different local leaders and, all this kind of stuff, trying to make all these connections and turn that into the S2 shop for them to make actionable. We rolled up a bunch of bad guys, turned them into the intelligence guys and all that. And, did some flyaway. We did a lot of flyaways as well. Especially for the DAs, right? Just getting in and kicking in doors. We had those kind of long, more drawn out battles. It just was so active there, and we just had the command at the time that was open for us doing anything. Yeah. And at that time, Marines were very, very effective.
Yeah. I mean, I know that early first couple of years, I mean, from the kickoff to end of 06, early 07, I mean, it was kind of the Wild West ROE wise,
yeah.
And, but it had to be because the insurgents or insurgent presence there was such that it really dictated a response that had to be on par with what you were getting, and they were fucking nasty,
Yeah.
There's no two ways about it. Was there an operation that stands out as being kind of the hairiest, the one that you guys got the closest calls, or where it was the toughest to get through?
I mean, nothing like one specific moment. There were, like that battle for Yusufiyah was pretty wild. They started that off. We had went there on a kind of like a reconnaissance of that area. They wanted to set up an Iraqi police station in that town. So we went there. I think the whole platoon went, may have even been more. And we were going to go do like a site survey and find a good location for this and just check out the town, check out kind of, main ways in, main ways out, this kind of stuff, and see where the best place would be. And we had some leadership with us, and we were going to go do this. And we went, and when we drove in there, the whole town like stopped, and everybody was looking like, who the heck are you guys? And, we were cocky. We were kind of idiots. We were running around saying like, hey, where's Zarqawi? Where's this guy? Where's that guy? But no one had been in there into that town. There was no presence in there since the initial invasion, and they pushed up to Baghdad, and it just became like a hornet's nest, and we didn't know. There was no intel on that. We didn't know that was like where everybody who was a shithead in Iraq at that time looking to do stuff was set up and working out of.
Do you know if by shithead it was Saddam's former guys? Was it Al-Qaeda guys?
No, it was all Zarqawi's guys.
Okay.
And we ended up kind of learning that the hard way, obviously, through fighting them and all this. And a lot of guys that were not Iraqi, a lot of guys Jordanian, Syrian, this kind of stuff. And I remember we turned this corner and there was a guy there, and he looked like me or you with red hair. And it was like, what in the world is someone like that doing in a place like this, And there were obviously the Chechens there and all this kind of stuff. So we had found out the place that they were going to use as the compound. We went away, and I can't remember how many days after, say a week after, went back to establish that. And it was like that second going in, everybody was headed out. It was like all the shops closed down, like as we're going in, it's like, oh, shops are closing. I remember people were going in to get like their kids out of school, and it was like a mass exodus out of that town. And then that whole compound got established and security set up, and okay, here we're gonna start doing this. But everybody knew something was gonna happen, and they drove around with and I think the name of the truck they used was it's like a Dolphin. The equivalent is like a Jeep Grand Cherokee type vehicle. Yeah. And it was just packed with explosives and packed with, all kinds of stuff. And that guy was trying to drive into the position, and a Marine from my platoon, Polish immigrant, he actually got his citizenship when we were in Iraq. He jumped up on the turret of a vehicle that was just sitting there, and he, unloaded into the truck. And that guy, it either caused the truck to blow up early, or that guy just detonated it as he was taking fire. And I mean, it knocked out like half of that block. I think I still have pictures of that. And we were finding pieces of that guy everywhere. The EOD guys were like feeding pieces of that guy to dogs.
Jesus.
Like it just was, the street dogs. And then that kicked off like, a massive fight for that. I think it was like 5 or 6 days fighting in that town to like secure that place. And then we kept that as a fob there. And people, we had Marines manning that place for the whole rest of the time. And but yeah, that was just a wild, nasty place. And there was so much at that time that kind of, I don't want to say it was the beginning of the insurgency, because people out there probably know the timelines of all that more than me. But that was at the time when it was like the beginning of these insurgents really organizing themselves and putting their tactics together with the IEDs and the V-beds and their ambush tactics and kind of how they were going to fight with us. That was kind of like the beginning of it. So much of it was unknown, where like if you were to go there 2 years later or something, okay, well, you go in there and on your workup, you understand all of those enemy tactics, because there's so many after action reports and so much data on what they are, who they are, and how they operate, where we just didn't have that at that time. It was like that end of the conventional stuff, which went by pretty easily. You were there, I mean, it was fantastic how well that went and how orchestrated that was. And it was very uncharacteristic, or I guess it was very different than when the insurgency set themselves up. I don't think Saddam's guys fought like these guys fought.
No, they didn't.
And they definitely didn't have the organization. I mean, what was so good about those insurgents was how they could ingrain themselves in the communities.
Yeah.
And 10 guys would go in there, and I remember we'd be in meetings or we'd be with our, leadership, and they'd be saying to them, well, how many guys are there like in this village? And they'd be like, oh, there's 10 guys. And they go, okay, well, how many military age men do you guys have? And they'd be like, oh, 2,000.
Yeah.
Okay, then there's 2,000 of you. There's 10 of them. Go kill them. And they're like, no, we can't do that. Why? Right? Like, why not? Oh, they'll kill us. And then you go, well, how many are there? There's 10. How many are you? 2. And you just go around in circles.
Yeah.
If you had 2,000 SEALs or 2,000 Marines and there was 10
shitheads.
Yeah, and whatever. Maybe they're the best shitheads ever that have ever shitheaded, right? Like maybe they're fantastic.
They wouldn't make it to lunch.
They wouldn't make it to breakfast.
Yeah.
But they just didn't have that mentality, and they allowed these guys to come in almost like in a mafia style. They allowed them to come in, ingrain themselves in that community, connect with whether it's hospitals or the local religious leadership or the local municipal leadership. And it's not so much, I don't think, now looking back at it, because, we were kind of angry about the whole time in Iraq. And I mean, I'm sure you were the same and everything too, was we were kind of like, okay, you're playing both sides. You're ominous dominus. You're a shithead. You're getting rolled up, right? And it was that. And yes, you're responsible for your actions and what you do and all this, but like
to
those people, yeah, they almost didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
And they did have a choice. They could have fought back and protected their own damn towns and done some of this, but they couldn't at the same time. It's so looking back at it now and being older and more mature and just thinking about some of those on the ground scenarios and instances, like, as a leader, like say as a platoon commander or a platoon sergeant or a battalion commander or even say a squad leader, team leader, how do you navigate a scenario like that? It's, and that's where, like, especially in the Marine Corps, what I've always noticed and obviously special operations groups, it's the same thing. Like, you can go out with 4 guys and get so much done just because of the decision-making ability of those people. And small unit Marine Corps is always been known just to be incredible with that. You're much better off with a team of Marines, 4 men, a fire team, than a battalion of Marines when it comes to, like, decision-making and getting stuff done. And that's not a knock on any, battalion or company level leadership or even platoon level leadership, there's no knock on that. It's just, it's like, the more things you involve, the more overhead you involve, the harder it is to get anything done. And I think the Marine Corps at that time was very good at sending squad size elements out and have always been that way, right? Like even back to Vietnam and stuff, but sending squad size elements out to get stuff done and stuff really did get done.
And for the Marines, a squad is 15?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on if you have any attachments, but like if you think about it, there's 3 fire teams in a squad. A fire team is 4 men, right? So you're looking at 12 guys right there, plus you have, like, if you have a radio operator, that squad leader, if you have a corpsman attached to you, if you have any, like, weapons guys attached to you or anything like that. So yeah, anywhere from 12 to 16-ish guys.
It's interesting because, in the SEAL teams, a platoon is 16. A squad is 8. It's very even how it's broken up, where it's strange that it's an odd number. There's three fire teams to make up a squad. It's it's 12 guys. Yeah. But
right.
Yeah. From a parallel standpoint, hearing you talk about, the position that the locals found themselves in, I mean, it sounds very reminiscent and paralleled to the Viet Cong and Vietnam scenario, where it was, people that during the day were, selling you food and giving you haircuts and delivering supplies to the base, and then at night they were fighting you, and playing both sides, but also putting a lot of villagers in impossible positions where it was like you're fighting either way. Like, not fighting isn't an option, or you're just going to get steamrolled. You're either fighting, Al Qaeda, or you're fighting Americans, and there's just not a third option, unfortunately, unless you try to flee, which, a number of them did. But and even for that matter, I mean, you saw a lot of that in Afghanistan here in the last 18 months of ultimately when we evacuated and or left, and since then seen kind of the steamrolling of so many in that same vein. It seems like some things never change, and there's an element of that dynamic to warfare that's just always going to exist.
Yeah, and I think we did a good job with it. I remember we, and it wasn't just us. I mean, I know many different teams and many different units, and I'm sure, even on the Navy side or Army side, they did this as well, was the Marine Corps had this idea, and I don't know the history of it exactly, but in Vietnam, the Marine Corps had these things called CAP platoons. And what they did was, it was small units that went out, lived among the population, almost kind of like a Green Beret type mission. But it was just to embed yourself within that community, within that population as a small unit, and kind of show them that, like, we're here to protect you. Just make sure you're doing what you should be doing to protect yourself and your country and your, and so people don't, the idea was it would kind of take away that I'm in this impossible position because no one else is here.
Yeah.
And obviously it helps with intelligence gathering. It helps with, being connected to a community like that as a small group can build trust and all this. And that was the intent of it. And it was very successful in Vietnam. Someone, maybe it was foresight, had this idea of doing the same thing in Iraq. And we were tasked with that mission. And it was, so we studied that a lot. We trained that a lot. You know, we did the whole Stu Seagal thing in San Diego with the role players and in the community. And you know, I thought it was, number one, I thought it was a really good mission. It made sense, right, to do this. And I think for us, it worked. And it worked in as much as, okay, we did have these cool connections and these people that did work with us and did help us, but it also worked because it allowed us to see where the shitheads were. Mm-hmm. It exposed a lot of that stuff that gets done behind closed doors that we can't recognize. We're in another culture, right? So it did kind of, not made the enemy reveal themselves, but it showed us what was actually going on from the enemy side, and it was pretty actionable. Yeah, you know.
Did you guys lose any of your own guys?
No, we had a lot of wounded, a lot of heavily wounded guys, but we didn't actually lose anyone. The battalion lost, I think it was 16 guys.
Did you get injured at all?
No.
Yeah.
No, I mean, so not in like I don't have a cool, I got shot kind of story, but we were, I can't remember how far the movement was. Let's say it was 100 miles on foot. No, 10 miles or so. And we kind of had, you know, heavy packs. We were patrolling down to this area. And I remember within like the first half hour, a guy, big saw gunner, had twisted his ankle and went down. And so it was like, of course, big, strong guy, he's carrying the most stuff. It's like, okay, now we need to spread load his gear because he's all jacked up. So then we're all carrying the gear, and it was at night, and it just was like difficult movement. You know, I remember we walked through this like oil refinery thing, and it was very weird. It was like, we're going through canals, we're going through fields, we're going on Hardball Road, and now we're in this like oil field, and it was like just the driest, kind of slimiest ground. So it's like all this different terrain. And something happened, and I fell and twisted up my knee and like jacked up my knee really bad. And you know, I still have issues with that knee. I still remember. And I remember we got through all that, and I got back, and I just went down to to see medical on that fob. And it was like lay on the table, and they're jacking around my knee, and and I was like, they're like, okay, well, do this and come back, and we'll see if it's going to get worse. And it was pretty swollen, pretty jacked up and all that kind of stuff. And I just went back and never went to see them again. Cause I was frustrated because I was jacked up for a few days, but, I mean, I never had any, I didn't get the enemy marksmanship badge, thank God, like none of that. So,
so you guys, that was a 7-month deployment. You finished that up. Did you do another deployment to Iraq?
No.
Did you go to Afghanistan?
No, I was never in Afghanistan, no.
And so when you came back, what was the transition process that ultimately, from the time you got back there until you started getting involved in contracting work and then ultimately into the Ukraine stuff, how did that all transpire?
Yeah, so I had finished up my time in the Marine Corps in general and didn't really know what I wanted to do. I thought my best bet was to try and get back to normal kind of life, right? And again, I didn't know. I didn't really have a mentor helping me. I had a good group of friends back home that I just kind of jumped into and started to do normal stuff. But like, it was very difficult because nobody was like me, right? And so I tried to do like the finance thing. I tried to get a normal job, tried to kind of get set like normal, tried to have like a girlfriend, bought a house, like this kind of stuff. And I just started to have like a lot of issues that obviously, became like PTSD type stuff and anger stuff. I mean, I was angry. I never started anything with anybody. Like if we were out a lot, that group of friends I had always, we socialized a lot. We were always out at bars, that kind of stuff. I never was like, thank God, I never got into any drugs or never was an alcoholic or anything like that. But I drank a lot. And
Scotch.
At that time, no, right?
Just beer.
Yeah, now I'm more refined, Mike. But yeah, I was not the guy that went out to a bar and was the dickhead and was picking fights. But like, if we were out in a group of friends and some guy did the whole shoulder bump thing, or like, you know, grabbed one of the guy's girls, or just was like picking on one of my friends, I had zero patience. And I went from 0 to 12. Like, I'm talking, there was none of this American bar fight where it's like, I push you, you push me, I swear at you, you swear at me, and nothing really happens. Maybe 1 or 2 punches got thrown. It was like, no questions asked, and I was dropping you, or I was grabbing a knife, or like, just, I had no patience, you know, and I got away with a lot of that because a lot of my friends were bouncers at these bars that we went to. So I, you know, but I never started anything. I'm not that kind of person. I didn't want to see anything happen to my friends.
This was in the Chicago area?
Yeah.
One thing I was curious of, from the time you started jiu-jitsu and did it for a little while before you joined the military, from the time you joined and the whole time you're on active duty until this period in your life, was it pretty spotty as to when you were training, or did you get some?
Yeah, I mean, it was, spotty is probably a good word. It was training when I could train. You know, the Marine Corps implemented that.
Marine Corps martial arts.
Yeah, which is you know, is good. You have to remember, many people in the Marine Corps have never, you know, when you join the Marine Corps, same as if you join the Navy, and have never thrown a punch or never been punched. So something's better than nothing. When I enlisted in the Marine Corps, it was all the old school line training.
Yeah.
The pugil sticks and the, you know, bayonets and all this kind of stuff. So, you know, the McMap program and some of the Army stuff that, you know, I've been able to work with those guys and do some stuff on, it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
Right. You know, so I always was just training. And then when I got out, I really, like at this time that I'm talking about, I really started to focus on training.
Yeah. And so this is what, like 05, 06?
No, this now we're talking like way later. This would be like, oh yeah. So yeah, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, this kind of stuff. I started to be able to train a lot more.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm having all kinds of, issues that I didn't know were issues. I mean, I guess I did know, but I didn't know, and didn't know what I wanted to do. So then I got into contracting, and I did, you know, everyone was going back to the Middle East at that time on those contracts, and I wanted to be closer to home. And I took it used to be a popular contract. It was the Mexico and Central America contract. So I was doing surveillance contracting for different agencies. Like, we were the guys sneaking into Mexico, and like,
oh shit,
yeah, I was in Juarez a lot and doing like, just, it was kind of cool surveillance type stuff.
Is it all counter narcotic stuff, I assume?
Yeah, all like mainly cartel stuff. And at that time, that was when everything was just really starting to come out about the cartels and how they were pushing towards the borders and doing all that kind of stuff. And it was pretty good. I mean, we did some stuff here too, because, you know, I'm not going to get into kind of how all that works, but like, we could follow people from Mexico into the US.
Yeah.
That were doing some of this stuff. And sometimes they would fly in, sometimes they were driving in, and, you know, there were, so it was interesting. There were times we were doing stuff actually here as well, which always seemed to cause interagency issues of, you shouldn't be here, we should be doing this and all that. So it was interesting. I liked it. It was fantastic money, obviously, for me at that time. But I ended up being away very often. It was very sporadic. Like, I'd be at home doing nothing for a while, and then I got a call like, hey, you know, you're going to be gone for anywhere from a week to 3 weeks or something, doing this, you know, job, following these people, following this guy. And then I'd come back, and I could be home they were supposed to give like 7 to 10 days off before they could throw you back out again. But sometimes it'd be a month.
Yeah. And
so it just was kind of weird, and you couldn't really plan anything, you know, because you don't know when the phone's going to ring. And, so after a little while, you know, I liked it. It was very cool. It was like doing some really cool surveillance stuff, like old school surveillance, like sitting in a bush and, you know, watching a guy ghillie suit on, all the way down to like, you're in a car, you know,
Stakeout kind
Yeah, stakeout thing, peeing in Gatorade bottles, no air conditioning on in the car kind of stuff.
Were there any close calls?
Yeah, I mean, there was a couple times where there were these guys in Mexico where they, so they were moving a lot of drugs and meeting and doing kind of their cartel shit at funerals. It was like it made me actually think of like mafia movies where like that's the best place to meet because we can all be there and we have an excuse because it's this guy's funeral. So somebody had died and we were watching the funeral. It was just me and my partner and he was somewhere else. And I was trying to get closer because we saw them all going in and it was like, we didn't realize this was going to be going on. There were so many people going to be there and we took a lot of video footage as well, right? Photographs and stuff and then video footage. And I was trying to get closer because it was like, this is cool. This is like good intel to get. And so I remember I got there, but then I didn't realize the street I was on, there was many people that could come behind me. And so all these people start walking like from behind me this way. And at the time I was stuck in the front seat of the car. I hadn't moved back yet kind of thing. And there were people right there. And I just remember it's like, okay, so I'm clearly a gringo. I'm clearly have no reason to be around this place. And you know what it's like anything else in any other country. If people with bad intentions and these bad organizations are doing a thing, they kind of have their own security. They know this funeral is a hot spot for, not just for say, law enforcement kind of thing, but for other cartels and other whoever, rivals and stuff. So, they're a little more vigilant. And I just was sitting there and I just remember I took my gun as like a Glock 19 and I just had it under my thigh, and I'm left-handed. So like, I don't know if you've done any of those cool guy gun in a vehicle classes or courses.
I'm
or
left-handed also.
It's such a pain in the backside to be left-handed in a vehicle.
Well, unless you're in the passenger seat, and
right?
That's the deal. But
then it's always easy. It's always like, hey, you drive, I'm in the passenger seat, but I'm by myself, right? Yeah. And for anybody who doesn't know, who's not left-handed, try it, right? Yeah. It's very difficult, and there's really no good way. There's no like, here's a variation, right? And I just remember I'm like, all right, so I'm just gonna have to do this right-handed. I had it under my leg, and I just kind of was sitting there and trying to like look like I'm doing something, fumble with the radio. And then after that, I was like, okay, well, I'm not gonna stay in this spot, and so then I had to leave and rework. But at that time when those guys were right there, and they were like known guys, I mean, you're talking, they're kind of, if I was to turn around and look behind my A-pillar, that's where they were standing. Yeah. And what can I do? I can't do that. Yeah. So that was pretty hairy there. The other one was we were on a compound kind of in a bush. Like I say in a bush, I don't mean I was in like an actual bush, but kind of, right? Like laying in the prone, all camoed up, looking in the backside of, look, if you're going to be some kind of criminal and you get like a nice house, don't get one of those big in the back by your pool, just big glass wall kind of setups, right? Don't do that. Yeah. It's very easy to see what you're doing. Yeah, and just see how many people are in your house. And, that job though really taught me that like, or really showed me, because I was like me, myself. I wasn't like part of a team. Every once in a while I'd have a partner on a job, but like that partner was kind of doing his own thing. It wasn't ever two guys in a vehicle or two guys like in a hide or in a building or something. And what that taught me being by myself like that really was like, everything really is worth gathering. Yeah. Like everything. Yeah. Like
you can pick something up or learn something from almost anything that's going on.
Exactly. Yeah. And you're more tuned into it because you're just by yourself. Yeah. I can't rely on you doing half of the work or
you can't rely on me doing a quarter of the work. Who you kidding?
Or even like a piece of anything, right? It's like you're all by yourself. And so, and that job too was the first time I actually had to do the report writing or anything, right? Like always in the Marine Corps, it's always that next level of leadership that's doing the majority of the paperwork stuff. So and in writing those reports, I really kind of learned obviously doing what I did in the military and stuff. Attention to detail is always big, and I'm just talking like the next level of that.
Yeah.
You know, and that's really what I learned, and obviously we apply that now with the stuff we do in Ukraine and all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, so did that for a while, and then
on that particular op, were there people that came close by? Is that?
Yeah. So on that one, I was laying there, and I started hearing rustling from behind me, and I was like, oh man, okay, I'm not gonna turn around. Like, nobody knows I'm here. Nobody can see me. I'm not gonna even move, right? Like, there's no way. If that's a guy, there's no way he's here because he knows I'm here. And so I'm just kind of sticking by, and I keep hearing the rustling. And then eventually, you know, and I'm still watching, I'm still filming and taking photographs and stuff. And then eventually I had my kind of like the equivalent of like a bino harness on, and I had a firearm in there. And so I grabbed that, and I'm laying on my chest. I'm just going to turn around and present this thing because it's getting like closer. And it's like if you were sneaking up behind me kind of thing. It's that kind of sound, you know. And I still hadn't looked. And then I just remember I turned and kind of did like the movie style, laying down kind of half on your back, John Wick style, you know, sliding across the pool room floor kind of deal. That was kind of my position. And it was like, I say it was like a coyote, but it could have just been like a street dog.
Fucking chupacabra sneak.
Yeah, and it just was like hanging out, you know, and obviously it smelled me or whatever, I think, right?
I'm sure.
But it just didn't care, and it just was just doing its thing, and it was being really slow, and it was hot. I was sweating like a goat anyway, and I'm like, I knew, I was very confident that if it was a guy, he didn't know I was there. Yeah. So I wasn't worried about like this guy sneaking up on me, but I didn't want him to step on me. Mm-hmm. You know, I didn't want him to get close enough to step on me, and I couldn't like turn because then I would have made a bunch of noise and all this. But yeah, when I turned and it was a dog, I just kind of like, and again, in front of me, there's stuff going on. There's, you know, there's guys and there's stuff going on. So like those moments, like the one with the guys behind the A-pillar though, and they probably were standing there talking, you know, about whatever, the game the night before or something. But at that time, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, if one of them saw me or wanted to like, hey, who's in that car or what's that car? Like, you know, that could have turned ugly quick. And I'm just standing there, you know, with a Glock 19. I'm pretty shifty with a Glock 19, I'll say, but like, that's not what you want to have happen, right? Like all that stuff that you see in the movies and on TV and all these shows and all that, you don't want that stuff to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it never pans out well.
No.
So you did that for a few years? Or?
Yeah, I did it for like 3 years, over 3 years, and then got finished just because of the scheduling and all this. But it was fantastic. And then when I got done, I just wanted to distance myself from everything. I still kind of was having a bunch of you know, problems in my own head and just wanted to, you know, get away from everything. Mm-hmm. So I tried to be like normal guy, and probably did okay at trying to be normal guy, working normal jobs. And, you know, I got to focus on the academy. The academy was growing. And
what were you doing job-wise?
I did, it's very funny because I found out like a bunch of different veterans do this kind of stuff, like the finance thing, the insurance thing. You know, I just tried to do anything that allowed me to train jiu-jitsu. And I was making okay kind of money. I did some IT stuff, you know, and, you know, thank God I was always able to kind of like improve on my position, which is obviously something I learned at a young age from the military is like, look, if you're going to make a move, make sure the move benefits you and make sure, and, you know, that's good advice for anybody listening now. If you're looking to move or want to make a move, make sure you're improving your position. And so I was always able to do that. And again, I just wanted to distance myself from everything. I kind of wasn't in contact with anybody, didn't want to be in contact with anybody, and just, you know, just was having a bunch of issues. And eventually, you know, the academy really started to do well. And so that was always kind of my saving grace and my focus. And And then it built up and everything was good. We talked a little bit about it before. I kind of found myself. I fixed myself kind of thing. As far as all the issues I was having, and everything was pretty good. And then
a lot of that, not to interrupt, but a lot of that was kind of finding the Jewish faith, and that coincided with it.
Just giving me, like, I'm very, it's hard to explain. Like, I'm a very focused person. Like, that's why I always say, like, I never got into drugs. Like, if you gave me heroin, I'd probably be the best heroin addict that's ever lived, and I'd be dead in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'd be the best at that.
Yeah.
I would just want to, like, learn everything about it, the best way to shoot it into your eyeballs or whatever.
Yeah.
And, I'm like that with everything. And when I was kind of in that rut, I was, kind of the most angry, and I'm trying to have a normal life and just freaking out all the time over nothing. I was having like a lot of issues where like I'd go do something. Like, hey, we're going to Mike's birthday party today. And I'd be halfway there and be like, nope, I just turn around and go home, and other people are like, hey, like, why aren't we going? Or, whether it's a girl I'm with or whatever, okay, now you've ruined my day kind of thing. And I just didn't care. I just couldn't go. And I didn't really, and then if you bothered me about it or you asked me about it, I got angry.
Yeah.
And I was in this weird rut, and I didn't really ask anybody for help. I don't know why, right? I mean, I could lay down on the couch and we could try and figure out the why. I don't know. I just kind of.
Yeah, I think, one of the weird things or kind of ironic things I think about being angry is in the moment, you never think you're wrong.
Yeah.
It's like the anger like stems from you feeling like you're right, but you're misunderstood and nobody gets it, and they're questioning you and whatever. And so I think that's one of the biggest struggles, with anger and controlling it, is that it feels like you're justified in your behavior.
Yeah.
But so, ultimately you worked through that.
Yeah. And everything was good. And kind of fast forward to, the Afghanistan pullout, right? That obviously bothered me. I had a lot of friends that, went to Afghanistan, that did a lot of great things in Afghanistan, and that died there, and we all have. And it bothered me. And I was, a couple of people contacted me, and there was some interest of us going and helping with the pullout. So I was down in Virginia Beach one weekend, we were having meetings about getting ready to go and some of this logistics and planes and gear and the plan, right, on who has contacts that can help with this and help with that to go in and kind of help with that pullout.
Was that with an organization at the time?
Kind of, but I'm not going to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was with all the other organizations that were doing this stuff. And there was many, right? And it was amazing, what actually happened and how everyone pulled together and all this kind of stuff. But anyway, I come back on the Sunday morning, and it was the same time when Hurricane Ida was coming. And I had always been fascinated with watching hurricane type coverage on TV. So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about everything that we had just kind of went over during those meetings and stuff, and I'm watching the hurricane coverage, and I texted a friend of mine who is special operations guy, and I said, hey, what do you think about going down to the hurricane and just doing all the stuff that people either can't do or won't do, like right when the hurricane hit? And I don't know why I texted him. I had never thought about doing any of this kind of stuff before. I really don't know. And he just sent back a text. He just said, yes. And I was like, well, that doesn't really fit why I asked you, but I guess, okay. So we grabbed another couple guys and put a plan together and just got in a truck and drove south. We didn't know where we were going. We knew we were going to Louisiana when the hurricane hadn't even hit yet. It still was out in the Gulf. And we just figured, hey, we don't need to stay here and make some crazy plan. We have 15 hours in the truck that we can come up with a plan. And, back up a little bit, my academy at this point is really large. We have 300 people at the academy, and we have a lot of special operations guys a lot of first responders and police officers and all this kind of stuff. We have a good group of people and other veterans as well, right? So we grabbed a bunch of guys, we start going south, and we get to the hurricane, and you know, we were able to make a big impact there, doing some stuff in the water, and you know, we fed over, you know, a couple thousand people and watered a couple thousand people. We were helping first responders clear roads, because they would drive, like, say, a fire truck, and if a road was completely blocked off, they kind of would just turn around and go home. And that might sound bad, and it's not a knock on them at all, but like, think about it. If that vehicle goes down, that engine goes down, or one of those guys gets hurt trying to clear the road to get somewhere, now they're down an engine or they're down men and all that. So like, at that time, they couldn't really, it was right in the beginning of the hurricane, so they couldn't really risk any of that. So we were like, okay, we'll go clear it for you. And we had chainsaws, and, you know, we were cutting people out of their houses that were stuck in their houses and all kinds of stuff. And we made like a big impact there. And we got into some sticky situations there. You know, everybody's happy to see you in the beginning. Everybody's just happy to get through an event like that. And then you're talking day 3, day 4 with no food, no water, no electricity. You know, like, society starts to crumble. And I've said this a couple of times before. Somebody famously said, like, we're 3 meals away from like total dystopian, like, yeah. And it's kind of true. You know, like, it really is. And we saw that. And, you know, and we're the guys running around with a trailer full of food, water, and gasoline and all this kind of stuff. And so, yeah, we had to kind of put some security together, and we made 2 trips to that hurricane. You know, there was an issue with fuel, and we took a bunch of fuel, but we were doing a bunch of stuff. I mean, it was like 20-hour days. It was crazy, and we were eating MREs, and you know, it was hot. The heat index was like 106, and it was just, you know, we were in kind of the worst place. It was Laplace, Louisiana, and we didn't know it was the hardest hit place. We had an app. It was like a crisis management app or something, and what it did was it showed you, like, if you were stuck, you could open up a little ticket and you could say, hey, my cat's stuck in a tree. And if someone else on the responder side had this app, they could see, oh, Mike's cat's stuck in the tree, I'll go help Mike. We didn't use it for that. We just used it to see where the heaviest concentration of these tickets was. And that's where we went. And there was plenty to do. You didn't need an app like that to find people's individual problems. It was enough to do. And so we left that hurricane, and I was like, that was pretty good. Like, we have some guys that are capable, and we can, you know, it's easy to go to a gymnasium, and this is not knocking anybody that does this, because it's very valuable. You know, to go to a gymnasium and hand somebody a blanket and a bottle of water, right? But our guys can do so much more than that with the experience that we have. And we did that. And I talked to my partner at the academy, who also is a co-founder of Overwatch. And this was not Overwatch at the time. This was just, hey,
group of guys doing some shit.
Yeah. And I said, yeah, I think we might have something here. And then we actually helped with the Afghans stateside. So they brought all these Afghans back. We primarily worked at Fort McCoy, Wisconsin. We worked with the 101st Airborne, State Department, couple of other NGOs, including Save Our Allies and Team Rubicon, and with the Afghans up there, which I learned a lot on the NGO side there, that has given me good experience now, obviously having Overwatch, is that it's just a giant clusterfuck when you have the military, the State Department, and NGOs all trying to
do the same thing,
figure this thing out, you know, and you know, there was 13,000 Afghans on that base alone.
Wow.
Mike, you know, I'll show you pictures of this. It almost reminded me, and this is going to sound bad, and look, everybody up there did a great job, and it was a great place to do this, because you had this area at Fort McCoy that was conducive to having that many people there, but it almost looked like a Polish ghetto in the 1920s, 30s, 40s kind of thing. It just was like, they were just packed in there. You know, they had this tribe in with this tribe, and there was infighting with these people. And really what they needed to do, in my opinion, was the army needed to activate or needed to send guys from like 19th or 20th group, like the Guard Green Beret guys, and stick them in there with them.
Yeah.
And have them figure, I mean, it was a total Green Beret type mission. Like, we met people there that spoke better English than you.
Wow.
You know, like guys like, hey, 22 years, I worked as an interpreter for 7th group, or, you know, for these guys. And they were so good. And it's like, why don't you there was a woman there. They didn't know she was there. She was one of the candidates that ran for president of Afghanistan.
Oh, shit.
And she's just in this ville with all these
other people.
Yeah, you know, and it was like, how do you not know you have people like that? Why don't you allow them to organize, or teach them how to organize? And I get it. It's hard to process them, you know, and get them documented and get them the medical treatment that they need, and get them on this path to now being in America. But it was kind of like they just dumped them in there and tried to figure it out. And the Army, the 101st guys, God bless them, that's not their mission.
Yeah.
They got tasked with doing that. And you know, there was a lot of frustration with them, just with everything that was going on. I mean, even simple stuff, like they put them in these squad bays, and think of, like, you know, for any Marines listening, like, or anybody, these open squad bays like an MCRD or something, right? Where you have a whole bunch of racks and then like beds and then 2 bathrooms at each end kind of thing. They were putting them in places like that. Then they'd go into the bathroom and all the sinks would be broken, because they would stand up on the sinks and piss and shit into the sinks. Not because they're idiots, just because they've never seen a toilet or a sink before, and they don't know how to use it. And someone tells them the bathroom's right there. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fucking crazy.
So, I mean, stuff like that, like it just, and so I learned a lot about, you know, kind of the organizational side of an NGO. And again, we weren't really Overwatch. We kind of had this transition, you know, to that. Now that was in like September, October, November. We kind of rolled from the hurricane right into doing that because we wanted to do more, and I had connections with what was going on there with the Afghans. So we started doing that, and we made a bunch of trips up there, and we provided a lot of, and we gathered a lot of stuff they needed: clothes, toothpaste, humanitarian type supplies that they need, feminine napkins, all this kind of stuff. And we would do that, and then we would work in the kind of like the village and communicate with everybody and try to help them organize and all this. So we did that. Then my daughter got sick. She, you know, had a brain tumor and found out that, hey, in the next 20 minutes, we have to do the first of 2 surgeries. And, you know, it was a crazy time. So from kind of November through February, everything was kind of on the shelf as far as like what became Overwatch because of that, obviously, you know, and you and I talked during that time, and you know, and thanks for just being an ear for me during that, you know. That was very important for me, just to have people just to have a normal conversation with. Or
that's tough. There's no 2 ways about it. Anything involving your kids is hard to wrap your mind around. So
that thing happened, and then there's this guy in the academy who is from Ukraine. He had moved over 11 years ago. He hadn't been back since. And when Ukraine issues started happening in January and all the talk was going on, you know, you see the change in the guy, and you see him start to start to get bothered by what's going on. And so you're checking in with him, right? The guy's a friend, and he's at the academy and stuff, so you're checking in with him. And then after the war happened, it was like day 2 of the war, he was freaking out kind of deal, you know. And so I said, hey, he's a kind of brand new American, just got his citizenship, just got his concealed carry. And so he's, you know, from all the guys at the academy, he's trying to pick up different stuff, concealed carry this, how to, you know, grip and just all this kind of stuff. So I said, hey, let's go to the range. It was a Saturday morning. I said, let's go to the range and let's just, you know, put the phone away, get you away from the TV, and we'll just have a good time on the range. So we do that, and we get out to the parking lot, and it was freezing, right? February in Chicago, late February. And he goes, I think I'm just going to go back. And I was like, Yuri, you can't go back. Like, it's war. You don't know what the hell you're doing. He's like, yeah, I'm just going to go back. I said, well, wait. I said, let me get let me see what I can do. We'll get some people together. And at this time we had this beginning of Overwatch, but we didn't have paperwork filed or anything yet. We just knew it was going to be Overwatch, and we had some stuff, like maybe we had like a t-shirt or something, right? But we didn't have the 501c3 finished or even started at that point, I don't think. And, you know, we were going to leave in like the next day kind of deal. And so I talked to a recon buddy of mine, Zach, who is, you know, incredible Marine, and obviously, like, boots on the ground, he's fantastic, but he's also very thoughtful and planning and you know, all this kind of stuff. He's incredible. And he said, let's go, let's take him, you know, and the whole mission was just to make sure Yuri got back okay and bring him back. And we said, you know, maybe we'll pick up some supplies on the way, medical supplies, and we'll make some kind of bullshit IFAKs and we'll just drop them off somewhere.
Yeah.
But the thing was like, well, you know, and I said, maybe we can roll it into like an Overwatch something.
Yeah.
But the main thing is making sure he gets there. And we didn't know what was going on there.
And so the first trip and kind of the transformation of Overwatch into being what's now a significant organization that aids in Ukraine support started with just trying to bring a guy back home and get him there and back safe.
Yeah,
and
so he could give his mother a hug. Yeah,
that's crazy. And how many of you were there?
It was me, it was Zach, and it was Yuri.
So 3 guys.
We had a guy. This is a funny dog story. We had a guy that was going to go with us, an army guy, and right before we went to the airport, his dog bit his passport. Right?
That's fucking great.
Dog bit his passport, and it looked okay, right? I mean, I don't know why.
Enough for them to be like, this ain't fucking real.
Well, I mean, come on. It's clear. It's clearly a U.S. passport that's been chewed by a dog, right? Yeah. Like, come on. Yeah. But yeah, they wouldn't let him go. So we were down a man before we even stepped off.
Was he going to bring the dog?
No. So we just went over there, and, you know, I won't say the country we landed in, because we have channels there, and we you know, it's still we're still active doing this kind of thing. But, we go through this particular country. We had a contact there that, picked us up and, didn't speak any English, and none of us spoke his language. And we stopped at like every pharmacy. It's like an 8-hour drive to get to Ukraine from where we were. And we stopped at like every pharmacy and just raided it for gauze and anything you could think of that would be good for like combat trauma type stuff, you know?
At those pharmacies, was there a bunch of shit that you can't get here type stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it was very weird. And a bunch of stuff like, how do you not have this here?
Yeah.
You know? But it was so funny. The pharmacies there are like little shacks on the side of the road kind of thing, or small little shops, like, you know, not very big at all, smaller than this room. And we'd go in and be like, okay, do you have gauze? Like, yeah, we have gauze. Okay, I need all your gauze.
Yeah.
Like all of it.
Yeah. You have fentanyl, but you don't have Advil.
And we were filling up like stuff. And I remember this one woman said something, and we were using translator apps. And she was like, can you guys pay for all this stuff? And we're like, yes. No. You know, it wasn't, you know, when you're looking at the exchange, it was like nothing, you know, but it was funny. It's like, yeah, don't worry. We're not going to steal this, you know? And so we drove basically all night, got to the border, and, you know, the guy wouldn't let us cross at that time at night just for like dodgy stuff going on. You know, border crossings can be very dodgy.
Yeah. Except here in America.
Well, yeah, you just, you know, they'll actually hold your hand and walk you across, right? But yeah, border crossings in foreign countries are it's kind of a weird place to be, right? Because everybody's there for all kinds of reasons, and they had a massive like exodus of people fleeing at that time. Obviously, you know, you're talking, it was when we actually got there and were boots on the ground, it was day 4 of the war.
Wow.
You know, so it was right early days, and so we got there, and during that time, when we knew we were going in airports, on the plane with Wi-Fi and stuff, and in the car, Yuri had connected with people back in his local community that were kind of like, hey, I can get you in contact with this guy who's doing this, and he can get you in contact with that guy. So we had made some kind of very rudimentary contacts, and enough to where a guy would come and help us at the border. He had started a few days ago what now is Overwatch Ukraine. It was a different organization then, but it was like a little NGO that was providing stuff to refugees that were fleeing, and stuff to the front. And we're still doing a lot of that. I'm sure we'll talk about it. But he came and met us, and we're like, okay, let's go see your spot. This could be where we do our little medical drop thing. And of course, he found out we were there, and he's obviously a Ukrainian guy, and he starts calling everybody. I have these 2 American Marines here now, and who can use them, and what's the deal? And we had no plans for anything. We literally were just taking Yuri home. And it turns out, he goes, hey, do you guys want to go talk to the local military commander? We said, yeah, right?
What, when you first got in there, did they question you at the border for why you were there, and what reason did you give them?
So we get done at the border, and we're walking, and it's snowing, and it's freezing, and we're in this weird kind of like open, kind of like a parking lot, kind of like a field, and we have no idea where we're going. We crossed the border on foot, and we're trying to walk and trying to link up with this guy, and there's this like abandoned guard shack, and all of a sudden this guy starts yelling in Ukrainian, and he's like, hey, come over here. So we go over, and he's like, what are you guys doing? Let me see your papers. So we're showing him everything. We're thinking we're good. We're thinking we kind of got by, and he looks, and then he goes, okay, you guys are good. And we're like, all right, well, where do we go? And he goes, keep walking that way till you're in Ukraine. It's like, okay. And so we just kind of kept walking. That was kind of like the border crossing for us.
I mean, with all the supplies that you gathered, though, did you not have...
Oh, we had boxes. We just were walking with cardboard boxes, and our packs were all full of everything we had, yeah. And we just were humping across.
What did you bring personally? Like, what was your fucking loadout?
Cold weather gear. I brought a couple of different flashlights that I can use defensively if need be. And I'm trying to think what else.
Did you bring any fixed blade or any knives of any kind?
No, we didn't check any bags.
Wow.
Everything we took, we just carried.
Not even a fucking knife.
Nope. I mean, look, we can acquire things if we needed to. That was kind of our thing. And we've been in environments where it's like, if you need to get something, you can find a way to get something. Yeah. So we weren't really worried about that.
Did you bring a lot of cash?
We had a bunch of cash, and then we had obviously, we had been raising money through Overwatch anyway. Just kind of, we started raising money for Overwatch, just crowdsourcing initially. So we had some money there, and people were supporting us as they learned that we were taking Yuri home. Yeah. So we had outlets to get to that money, electronically as well, but we did have cash.
How much physical cash did you bring with you?
I think we had 3,000 or 5,000, I think. Not much, but like enough. Like that's enough if you go to Ukraine, because it's like, I think $1 is now like 35 or 40 of their hryvnias, Yeah. So it's like you can get a lot done. I mean, we were eating 3-4 meals a day on like $8 a day. Like, I mean, it's pretty cheap, You can get, if you needed a hotel there, it's like $10 a night kind of thing. So, then that's a huge benefit to us being in a place like that. We can get a lot of stuff done with money, So he asked, and he said, you want to go meet with this military commander? So we were like, yep. And we went, and it was like a full bird colonel we were sitting with. I love the guy. He's been, he's really helped us a lot, and thank God we've been able to help him and his guys. But the stereotypical Eastern European high-level kind of company-level officer, right? I mean, short little guy, big beer belly, bald head, like just total stereotypical. So we're sitting in his office, and, he's kind of checking us out. We're checking him out, and Yuri's translating. And we start asking him questions, and we kind of wanted to ask him enough to see what he was going to, see how warm he was to us. He would tell us some stuff, and he would kind of shell up on other stuff. I asked him some troop movement stuff just to see if he was going to, he shouldn't have told me, and he didn't tell me, but I wanted to see where we were at. And then he said, I said, well, we can help you. We're here for the next 9 days. If you need any help, let us know, And he basically asked us if we would do a site survey for him of all their kind of installations and their positions and what their men were doing and what we thought. So we did that. And, they had some stuff that was pretty good, from defensive type positions and stuff. And Zach and I were like, okay, yep, that's good. Then they had, actually, luckily they had a lot of stuff that was jacked up. Like they had way too many men, like, imagine like your house and they had a guy at every window kind of thing. It's like, look, you're going to burn these guys out. And they weren't sleeping. They're doing 12-hour shifts, like sleeping on wooden pallets. And, they had just different stuff. Their fighting positions were in the wrong place and all this. And we went over avenues of approach with them. And we really helped them with the site survey, sandbagging and what to sandbag and where and how and all this. And you could tell he was impressed by this. And he said, okay, I'm going to leave you guys with the major, and the major's going to take you through the town. It's some of the kind of more covert locations that we have and what we're doing there. So we said, okay. And Zach and I are kind of like, all right, this is good. He's giving us to this guy, and we're going to go see. And then at the end of that, so we did that, and we saw kind of some of their sniper positions and all of this kind of stuff. And at the end of that, we went and checked back in with the colonel. And he said, okay, so can you guys come and train the guys tomorrow morning? And we were like, yeah, okay, sounds good. So, 08, we'll be here and we'll train the guys, right? And he told us, he's like, what happened was over the weekend, the first weekend of the war, the country had over 200,000 people enlist in the army. And these are guys that were, they may have had previous military experience. They may have fought in 2014 and all that going on. But many of them were just the butcher, baker, candlestick maker, no experience. They had no uniforms. Many of them didn't have weapons. Guys were using twigs off a tree or 2-liter water bottles as their weapon. And so we were like, yep, we'll come train them. And our first thought, and especially Zach's first thought, because he's more kind of the rational thinker than I am, he's like, is this even legal? Here we are, and we're in a foreign country training a foreign army. Like,
I'm assuming that the United States government didn't know that didn't have an official understanding that you were there.
At that time, no.
Yeah.
No. I mean, it was the Wild West. It was day 4 of the war, right? And so we show up, and these guys were completely green, and we start off by, it was funny. The colonel said, like, okay, so I've seen kind of you guys in the movies. I like the way you guys patrol. I like the way you guys do this, and can we train the guys some of this? And he wanted like some CQB stuff and all this, and I was like, okay, well, let's just see, and medical, and so I was like, let's just see. And we get there, and it was at the point where we had to start, if you're going out on a patrol, squad size patrol, hey, last man, look behind you. Like, it was at that level.
Yeah.
So we kind of got them going on basic patrolling, weapons handling, just kind of being able to move, like, just, can you move? Can you, do you have a purpose on what you're doing, that kind of stuff? And then we got up to the point with them where we were doing 2-man rushes, and team rushes and squad rushes, and then also kind of breaking contact as well. And it was, those guys trained so hard. Many of them were out there with like a polo shirt, leather jacket, Adidas sweatpants, and gym shoes on.
Wow.
I mean, they didn't have uniforms, and that broke my heart. And later we made a plan to actually buy uniforms for them, because, like, imagine you just join your military, your country's been invaded. You join the military, and you show up to defend your country, and they don't even have a uniform for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's like straight out of Red Dawn.
Oh, it was so surreal. And so, yeah, we worked with those guys, and they did really well. It was kind of like we were their basic training.
About how many of them were there?
So it was a company size group, and we were training like platoon size, you know, so you're talking like maybe 30, 40 guys at a time.
Yeah.
And rotating them through. And then we got another group that we were training as well. So we did one group in the morning, one group in the afternoon. And then in between, both at like lunchtime, let's say, sometimes before, but mainly lunchtime, and then in the evening, we were doing all the humanitarian stuff with the kind of speakeasy organization that was there doing all that.
Yeah. How cold was it when you were there?
Oh, it was cold. It was, it was cold. It was snowing. I mean, these guys were doing team rushes in 3 inches of snow with gym shoes on.
Wow.
And I remember Zach, you know, you always find out when you need a new pair of boots when you find out you need a new pair of boots.
The hard way.
Yeah. And I remember we'd start training, and he's like, man, I knew I should have brought a different pair of boots. I thought these ones would get through. And then his feet were up by like 10 a.m. His feet were ice cubes, you know. Yeah, it was cold, and we were outside all day. I mean, we did some classroom stuff with them, but like on getting them moving, and just because my thought was like, we have 9 days. We're not going to get these guys doing any kind of like
High level shit.
No, in 9 days, but I need them to be able to move.
Yeah.
Right. I need them to be able to shoot, move, and communicate with each other, you know, and they just at a basic level. And it sounds easy. And I know, you know, people that watch this show, watch a bunch of other shows like it, and hear a bunch of guys like us talk about stuff, and they forget that like, it's not easy to do that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, more than anything, just like with most things in life, is that it takes time.
Yeah.
You know, like trying to learn anything in 9 days is difficult. You know, I mean, fuck, I can't learn to use an iPhone in 9 days when a new one comes out. Where were you guys staying?
We were staying at Yuri's family's house on that trip.
Okay.
Which was very weird. You know, I mean, there's the air raid sirens are going off, and you're just sitting there, you know, eating and having a few whiskeys at the table, and you know, it was just crazy.
Yeah. And how close was the nearest contact during your time there?
So at that time, there were Russian saboteurs in that area. It wasn't. When we go to Ukraine, we're not actually on the front or anything like that. We're behind the lines, and it's very conventional as far as like there's a front. It's not like Iraq or Afghanistan. Yeah. It's like there's a well-defined front, and then like stuff forward to that and behind that. But yeah, I mean, it's and that's kind of goes into the next thing. we found out really quickly we were at the war. Obviously you're there and the sirens are going off and all this. And here's a funny story. We were out training, and the sirens start going off, and the guys start freaking out, and they're like, where should we go? We run inside and all this. And we played, Zach and I, and you've been an instructor, you know how it works. We played kind of good cop, bad cop. And I can get pretty animated, and I was always bad cop, he was good cop kind of thing, right? And it was all just a game, as it is, you know. I was never pissed off at those guys. Those guys were working their hearts out, you know, let alone working their butts off. And they didn't need to be broken down like you would at any kind of boot camp or selection course. Their country had been invaded. That's enough to break anybody down, you know. So we didn't do any of that kind of stuff. We weren't thrashing them or anything like that. Like if a guy dropped his weapon, I was thrashing him, but like we weren't just, you know, doing anything like this. But the sirens start going off, they start freaking out. And Zach is normally really even keel guy, and he kicks off. And it's like, look, we're not hearing any impacts. There's no steel rain falling on us right now. Get back online and start rushing and start doing whatever we're doing. We're not going inside when the sirens go off. Yeah. And then they kind of realize, like, you know, we gave them the whole, this is the year at war and all this kind of stuff, and you guys are going to end up going and all this, and got right back to training, and they kind of saw like, okay, this is, and we never gave them like an inch. I mean, look, I don't have to be here. We've done our thing. I brought Yuri home. I can go home now, right? Like I'll take Yuri and we'll go home. And nobody pays us. We're not on a contract. We're not whatever. I'm here helping you in the freezing freaking cold in the middle of this war because you live in my friend's town and I like my friend and I'm trying to help out his people.
Yeah.
I don't have to be here. And so we were tough on them, and they plugged, it's kind of like when you were an instructor, those guys that plugged into the training, you plugged yourself into them.
Yeah.
And the guys that were just trying to skate through, you were a little more tougher on them kind of thing, right? And these guys all were plugging in. They all were really like working hard. And it was just, for us, it was so motivating, and we got a bunch of stuff done. One of the other things we were doing was we got a lot of attention from the NGO world, from the kind of want-to-be world, people who wanted to be where we were and get in. And how did you guys get in? Who's this? How did you connect with this? Can I have your contacts for that? And, obviously the more the merrier. And Zach and I, he really wanted just to help everybody. And I was like, wait a minute, we don't know all of these people. And it's just kind of a dodgy thing. And I'd never really navigated that before. People contacting us and just wanting to take kind of thing. And we had something that was pretty cool. We didn't know it at the time, but it really turned into something cool. So we started doing some recon for some guys that were coming in. This guy basically said he, was going to change the world and all this kind of stuff. He was going to land on Mars and change the war and all this. So it's like, okay, we'll help you find a couple of locations. And we start going out and looking. And we could do this because we had access to Yuri. We had an incredible Terp who knew the area. And so, long story short, we were supposed to connect with one of two guys in this other town, like outside of our AO, like 45 minutes away, where nobody knows us, right? And on this particular day, at this time, in this place. And so we go there. Of course, the guy's not there. He's not our contact. He's their contact. And we're trying to call him the whole way, and it was getting dark. And it was like, well, let's just punch out, and we'll just call the guy on the way. We have 45 minutes. Even if he doesn't answer right away, we'll find him. He'll answer. He knows we're coming. And of course, no answer. And we're in this other town, and there's some infrastructure there. There's like a sawmill. There's bridges. There's like some stuff. And we're driving around the town trying to look for this guy.
Was it Yuri's family's vehicle, or how were you getting
It
around?
was a guy he knew, his vehicle.
Yeah.
And he was driving. We didn't know this guy. Yuri knew him 11 years ago. And, so we're driving around town. Finally, we say, look, let's just go to the mayor's office, because the mayor doesn't know us, but he'll know of us. And we can tell him, call the colonel, call any of the guys in our area, and he'll know who we are. So on the way there, we're turning this corner, and these two police cars come around the corner and almost like hit us head on. These two idiots stumble out of the police cars, AKs drawn, and it's just like, oh man, this one guy almost tripped coming out of the police car, and they're pointing, they get us out of the car. We're in the car. Yuri's like, should we get out? We're like, Yuri, just sit still, and we're just sitting there. They're screaming at us from outside the car. It's like, all right. So we get out. And the driver's over the driver's side, Yuri's over the passenger side, and me and Zach are over like by the trunk, like on the quarter panel area. There's a guy behind me, I can't see what he's doing, and the guy in front of me is pointing this AK right at me, finger on the trigger, and he's shaking like a leaf, Mike.
Holy fuck.
And I'm like, this dude is gonna ND in my face.
Jesus Christ.
And they were scared, so they got handcuffs. They handcuffed the driver. And here's the thing with the driver, we don't know that guy. We're trusting Yuri that he's a good guy. He could have drugs in the car. He could have weapons in the car. Like, I don't know, right? Luckily, everything was okay with him. So they handcuffed the driver. Then they handcuffed Yuri. The two Marines are standing at the back of the car, not handcuffed.
That's surprising. They handcuffed the nationals, not the foreigners.
It was so funny. And they ran out of handcuffs. So they're yelling at a guy in a convenience store to come out and rummage through the cop car to get
what the fuck,
to find other handcuffs. Then they handcuff us, and they handcuff me backwards. And if you've ever been handcuffed like the wrong way, it's not very comfortable, right? And so then they take us in, and so the SBU is there, right? The SBU is kind of their FBI, CIA kind of thing. It's more like their FBI. So they... Go ahead.
Well, at that point, or leading up to, or any time you were there, were you thinking like, the fuck was I thinking?
No. I mean, look, it's, you you're in a foreign country, you almost, like I told Yuri, I said, look, it's almost expected that you get rolled up with what we were doing and how we were doing it.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you might get rolled up, right? And I didn't like the whole idea of helping these people either. I didn't like the idea of going to another AO. Not that it was a bad idea. I don't think, you know, Zach kind of pushing for us to do this was wrong. I think he was trying to help these people. I just didn't like the idea. Yeah. Right. Doesn't mean it was bad. And you know, we didn't have a falling out or anything. I just didn't like it. Yeah. For these kind of reasons, you know, it's not our thing. We're taking time out of what we do to help someone else, which is great. But like, at what expense, you know, getting shot in the face with an AK. And, so they get us in and they're interrogating us. And I wasn't worried because I knew, like, look, they can call the colonel. Yeah. They can, you know, they'll check our passports. Like, we're going to be okay.
Were they accusing you of being opposition?
So what happened was 4 hours earlier, they had rolled up a bunch of Russian saboteurs that were in there doing stuff. And so they must have thought this is round 2. And, yeah, so it was not good, right? And so we start talking, and I said, you know, typically, and I've been in places before, I've been at, you know, border crossings in Canada and stuff where they've said, like, unlock your phone for me, and I've said no. But this guy was like, hey, well, can I see your phone? And I was like, yeah, you can see my phone. Because we had already started taking some pictures of stuff with, like, you know, to show, and I was like, if he just looks at my phone and he looks at some of the pictures I have, he's gonna see that everything matches up, you know. Yeah. And so you could see right away he kind of was like, okay. And then they just start asking us questions. We're kind of having, you know, a good time, but they start unhandcuffing everybody. Well, the key breaks on my handcuffs and I'm handcuffed backwards. So everybody's having a good time and I'm still handcuffed backwards and like so uncomfortable. So then this guy comes in. Little guy, and I kid you not, you know, I hate to put anybody down, this little weaselly rat looking guy, like he looks like a rat. He comes in, and at this time, the police chief's in there, the mayor's in there, the SBU guys are in there, and like, you know, everybody's in there wanting to look at us like we're puppies in the window or something. And they start asking this guy a bunch of stuff, and I'm like, okay, Yuri's sitting next to me. I'm like, what's going on? They're like, oh, they're talking to the guy. And then Yuri starts getting really angry and yelling and stuff. And I'm kind of like, all right, what's going on, right? Like, I don't speak this, you know, Ukrainian. He's like, that's the guy. And I said, what guy? And he goes, that's the guy. I said, no, he just said, you just said he's not the guy. And he goes, no, that's the guy. He's been lying the whole time. Because they asked us, what phone number were you calling? We gave them the phone number. They must have tracked it, brought the guy in whose phone number it was. And they had asked him, hey, are you this guy? And he said, no. They said, are you waiting for a phone call from anyone? And he's like, no. And then over some more talking, he finally goes, okay, yeah, it's me. And then that's what got Yuri mad. And then, you know, I'm just sitting there like, what's going on? And I tell you what, once I realized that was the guy that fucked us, there was like 2 rows of chairs in front of me and then like a podium. And I was going to, in the handcuffs, I was going to leap over the chairs and go bite the guy's face off. Like I was going to go bite him. Like I actually, in my mind, saw myself biting his neck, right?
Full vampire.
And it was like, it was so ridiculous. And they asked him, so why did you lie? Like, well, first of all, why didn't you answer? And he said, well, because times are crazy and all this going on. He's like, I was scared. And it's like, but that group told you that we were going to be calling.
Yeah.
You know, like, who do you think you are? James Bond or something? Like you can't answer your phone and all this. And then, you know, afterwards we still had to go do the freaking op with him and go scout the location and do all this kind of stuff. And I just told Zach, I said, keep that guy away from me, man.
Yeah.
Like keep him in a different car. And when we get to the spot, keep him away from me because I want to wring his neck.
Yeah.
And then afterwards I told them, I said, tell the guys that were kind of using him as a contact that he's not who they should be using.
Yeah.
Like he's not cut out for this, you know? Yeah. And so yeah, that was a very, very close call, but I'll never forget that guy just shaking like a leaf.
Jesus, man.
They were, yeah. It
was like right in your face.
Yeah. I mean, from me to you away, pointing that thing,
yeah,
you know?
Wild.
And then the guy behind, I don't know where he was pointing. I didn't want to turn around either.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was wild. And so we did that. went back to doing the training and did all that kind of stuff and made some good contacts there and really plugged into that. We'll call it like an NGO that was doing all that kind of stuff. And we came home and
it was 9 days total that you were there?
9 days total. We came home and already, like, I didn't want to leave, and me and Zach didn't want to leave. We got some attention because Zach knew a guy, a Marine that writes for the Washington Post. So they did a story on us, and then it's very funny. All the liberal media sources picked up the story. Because I think what happens, or what I learned over that time was, so like the Washington Post or the Wall Street Journal will come out with a story in their big Sunday editions, and then all these TV producers for all these shows just glean off of that and build their show for the week.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of like fucking
recycled stuff. So Zach did a bunch of TV appearances. I didn't want to do them. I'm not really, not that I'm not comfortable sitting here talking to you, but like I never wanted to be the face of this thing, but I learned as having a nonprofit, you have to get out and try and raise money and get your story out there and all this. So here I am, right? Yeah. So Zach, we were on like Anderson Cooper and Rachel Maddow and some of these other, it was very weird that they all liked our story. And
it is strange.
It was very strange, So
did any of the right-wing outlets reach out to you?
No.
Really?
No.
That's really fucking surprising.
Yeah, it's and I don't know, right? I mean, whatever. Look, I mean, we're doing cool stuff, but I don't know if it's cool enough for your show, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah,
But,
I mean, to me, that's not, like, there's got to be a reason for it, though, because, I would say, generally speaking, they're pretty receptive to that mission, or they're sympathetic to the cause of what you guys would be doing.
Yeah, I don't know, like, and I'll say this is just an idea. I don't know and I don't care, but like they were having like Chad and Save Our Allies on there talking about what they're doing in Poland and in Ukraine and stuff. So maybe just kind of if they're thinking about like talking to someone who's doing some stuff in Ukraine,
Not
talk to
overdoing
Chad.
it.
Yeah. And that's fine. I mean, his organization's fantastic. We've worked with that organization and stuff, and those guys are incredible,
Yeah.
So we start doing that, and we're trying to raise money now, right? We have this plan to make it a 501c3 and to really do this because we saw the impact we were having on the training side with these guys and the humanitarian side. And I say the training side is humanitarian at that point because these are not they are military now, but a couple of days before we got them, they were not.
Yeah.
And so at that point, it's us helping a citizen learn how to do what he has to do to defend his country.
Yeah. One of the things that I'm curious of, because you see a lot of it in the media on both sides, and I know there's always two sides to every story. At that time, what was your understanding of what was going on there? I mean, because I still, to this day, as we sit here, I don't really understand why Russia is there. Obviously they think they're in the right, and there's been a lot of atrocities that you can get into. But between at that point and even up until now, like, do you know what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, so it's very interesting because there's the propaganda side of this war too, just like every other war. But there's many people. Ukraine obviously was part of the USSR. It said Putin has this thing about getting the band back together and doing all that, putting the USSR back together. Why Ukraine is so hot for him is that on the eastern side of Ukraine, and I actually didn't know this until I went there and met a lot of Ukrainians and stuff, many of the people in eastern Ukraine don't speak Ukrainian, they speak Russian. And many of them in eastern Ukraine have businesses in Russia. They work in Russia. They have, their families live in Russia. They almost see themselves as more Russian than Ukrainian.
Is Russian and Ukrainian like Portuguese and Spanish, where it's similar but different enough to not be the same language?
Yes, I think it's and they share the same alphabet, just obviously like Portuguese and Spanish. But yeah, it's very different. Many Ukrainians that, there's many Ukrainians that don't speak Ukrainian.
Yeah.
Like at all. Can't understand it, don't know it. And obviously there's many. In Ukraine, though, it's funny because many of them do at least understand a good portion of Russian, because going back a few years and stuff, all their movies all had Russian voiceovers. All their cartoons all have Russian voiceovers, all that kind of stuff, like things coming from the West or whatever. So they're at least exposed to the Russian language, even if they're in Western Ukraine and they don't speak Russian.
So are the Eastern Ukrainians then, sounds like, pretty sympathetic to...
Oh, yeah. To Russia, yeah.
Like to the point where they actually are welcoming what's happening?
Yes. Many of them actually, Russia's done a good job of actually, as they do all over the world, but like even in Ukraine, putting even down to local leaders, even down to police chiefs and stuff, people in those positions that are sympathetic to Russia. So that it's almost like going back to an Iraq and Afghanistan thing where it's like it's hard to understand. There's nuances in that culture that don't really relate to the West, you know. It's very interesting.
So I guess dovetailing off of that, I mean, obviously there's part of the country that's still or is sympathetic to it or whatever, but do you know kind of what the primary reason as to why Russia invaded them, like why they want it back or trying to annex it?
Yeah, so they did this back in 2014, obviously with Crimea, and they've had a pretty steady foothold in Crimea since then. There actually has been fighting going on since 2014 up until February in Eastern Russia over some of these areas. Famously, there's groups like the Azov Battalion who have been fighting, and people say, okay, yeah, but it's just small little things, and it's unauthorized and all this. And, there have been some people, I think Vice was one of them, that made a documentary where they actually have been finding Russian uniformed soldiers buried in those areas since 2014 when there's not supposed to be any military operations going on or and these kind of things. So I think what's happened is since 2014, in my opinion, Putin's been looking for a chance. He's been building up kind of sympathetic allegiances on that eastern side, what now is like the Eastern Front, in these towns, in these different regions, Donbass and all that. People have heard this on the news, Kherson, these kind of places. And he's been waiting for the time where it's like, okay, I have these people that are sympathetic to letting me in there, to doing these things. When can I actually pull the trigger and try and actually just take that and do that? And, my opinion is he waited, and he didn't do it for 4 years during the last president. And, before our president now basically had the kettle on and his slippers on, Putin's making moves to do this. And, I think what this war has shown us is that all these years going back to when, you and I were a lot younger and Russia was the big bad wolf, I think a lot of that has been just paper and chocolate and the sun's
overblown.
Yeah, for sure. And because I think Putin thought if he could just go in and take Kyiv, that would be it. The country would fall, everything would be finished. The same way that, you think if someone goes to any capital and takes it, like think of you. When you got to Baghdad, it's pretty much that part's over, right? And that didn't happen. The Ukrainians, as in my opinion, as rudimentary as they are, they're fighting their guts out and they're doing an incredible job. They don't have the money. They don't have the size of military. They don't have the training that we have. For some of those reasons, a lot of Ukrainian military commanders are sympathetic to Russia. The last president cut all their defense spending budget because he has business ties in Russia and big companies in Russia and all this. And you're like, Russia's on your eastern flank there. Why aren't you constantly putting money into your defense budget? Well, because you're in bed with those guys. But all of that kind of stuff happens. They're still fighting their guts out, and then we start to see that Russia just can't, they can't have all these different fronts. They can't close the deal for sure, but they can't fight war in multiple places. Like we fought war in Iraq and Afghanistan for 20 years easily.
Yeah.
as far as supplies go, as far as like, I mean, come on, right? He couldn't do it over a couple 100 miles and had to keep pulling everyone back and, you know, trying to consolidate. He'd try and push out again. Everything would go to shit from a supply lines standpoint, and he'd have to pull back again just to consolidate. And my opinion there, and look, I've never been at that level as a war planner or anything like that. You know, I might have played 1 or 2 games at Risk in my day or whatever, but I'm definitely not some war planner at the Pentagon. I don't claim to be. But if I'm Ukraine and I get it, I have a very small force compared to Russia. I am being heavily funded by the West, including almost $60 billion from the US, right, of our children's money. I don't understand why, when Russia's so weak, why they don't follow them back and push them out. And now I'm starting to understand. It's obvious because some of those high-level military leaders are still in bed with Russia, and that's why it's turned into this lobbing artillery war. But the corruption's always been in that country. It always will be. And that's why, in my opinion, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, imagine if there was an invading force here, we would fight. They have an invading force and they're not fighting.
Do you think that or is it possible in your eyes, knowing what you know, having been there, that almost like with big pharma here, is that the political leaders and the big wigs in the military have an incentive to not finish it because they're getting a steady stream of a fuck ton of money and funding and sympathy from the entire world. And if they finish it, then that dries up.
Well, that's the other thing too, is that, you know, I totally agree with that because, and it's no knock on Zelensky. I think he's doing a good job. I mean, again, I've never been the leader of a country that's been invaded. It's obviously a very difficult job. Any executive leader of any country, including ours, that's a job that's very difficult, right? Yeah. Regardless of anything that goes on, it's difficult. And I thought he did a good job. I think the propaganda they're putting out that, you know, the country's strong and everyone's doing great and they're going to do this, I think it's great. I think, you know, I've seen that be the morale of the people, and especially in the beginning, we really saw that. Now it's a little bit different, you know, as we've been 4 more times since that first trip. But, you know, I just think that, I'll say this, there's that meme of Zelensky in a raft going around Fort Myers, Florida when Hurricane Ian came, like he's going door to door asking for donations, right? And it's like, and look, hey, I'm a founder of a 501c3. I ask for money, right? Like, please donate to the Overwatch Foundation. We're doing good stuff, right? Like, that's my gig now too.
Yeah.
But like, I'll tell you what, and we have proof of this. You give me $1, 95 cents, 98 cents of that goes to the mission, and we use it right away.
Yeah.
We're like, okay, $60 billion, man. Why are these dudes still in your country?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And so I guess with that, going into now the second trip back over there, how long were you home before you went back again?
Yeah, so we were home for about 8 or 9 weeks, and we tried to raise some money. We knew now we had a foothold there. We had cultivated this incredible network there on the military side and on the humanitarian side to get stuff done and really make an impact. And so we tried to raise some money, and, you know, we put our story out there. We started to speak at some Ukrainian churches. Chicago has the largest Ukrainian population outside of Ukraine.
Oh, wow.
Definitely the biggest in the U.S. And so we made some contacts there and spoke at some churches. And there's a guy there who, just incredible, gave us $100,000 from a organization that is a nonprofit. It was passed through money, because remember, at this time we're not a 501c3. Yeah. So if you give us money at that time, we couldn't give you the tax write-off or the tax benefit that we can give you now, right? Yeah. And so people were just donating to us out of like believing in our story and seeing the good we were doing, and it was incredible. So that money was passed through money from another 501c3. And, you know, that came with some restrictions on what we could spend that money on, and we were totally okay with that. And what Zach and I noticed was they needed a lot of help on the tactical side, but they needed civilian and military. They needed medical training. You know, I can patch you up. God forbid you ever take a bullet. I can throw a tourniquet on you and stop the bleeding and stick rolls of gauze in you, you know, like I can do that kind of stuff, but I'm not like 18 Delta level, you know, I'm not a SARC level kind of medical guy, and neither is Zach, and we did a good job. We gave those guys like full day of medical training, but it was like buddy aid stuff. And so I saw that we really needed to up that. So I brought my friend in, Tommy Santos, Army guy, done a lot of work with 7th Group, and he was at the GOAT Lab and everything, and just he's always kept up his skill, and he's added certifications and accredited kind of courses to his resume, and he's a wizard, you know. And so we raised that $100,000. We brought Tommy in. He's now the medical director at Overwatch, and I said, okay, I want the tactics I can do all day. We can do this all day, and hopefully we get the same group. I'd like to build on that, but let's throw a medical component. And we had this money that could be used on that because a hospital raised the money for us. It was $100,000. So I was like, okay, how do we do this? So I went to actually Cole Fackler and the guys at GBRS, and Cole said he could help us get in touch with like Focus Research Group and get the expedition trauma kits that I believe Focus Research Group has the, I may be wrong on this, but I believe they still have the contract with Dev Group for IFACs and stuff like that. There, it was another SEAL that started Focus Research Group, and Cole was like, hey, I have these. Like, we were going to sell them. You know, their product line's fantastic. Just if you don't know who GBRS is,
choke yourself.
Yeah, and contact those guys. They're incredible guys. They've helped us out so much, and they're just incredible people and high-level professionals, right? And so Cole was like, I have these, man. We were going to sell these, but I'll give them to you. Like, I can give them to you, and I'll just figure it out on the back end. Yeah, he's like, awesome. And I'll take care of everything for you. They'll just show up and you'll have them, you know. And their team there in Virginia Beach is incredible too. All the behind the scenes guys that they have working there, they've just been great with us. And so I was like, yeah, let's do it. So he sent those over, and it's just a great IFAC. I mean, look, I don't get paid by GBRS or Focus Research Group, but it's a great IFAC. I mean, you know, we're taking gear over there to put in the hands of these guys that are end users that are going to the front line. I don't want to give them some shitty IFAC just because I can take $1 and get 3 of them, kind of thing, right? I mean, they're expensive, but it's great gear, and you know, you and I have seen all kinds of different IFACs. You want the ones that are most efficient, have the gear you need, and
quality shit.
Yeah, and it works, right? I mean, I get it. There's a lot of civilian stuff, and thank God, because of the global war on terror, we have some of this knowledge, especially on the medical side now, and have some of these products that civilians can easily get their hands on. Everything from North American Rescue to you know, I know Mike Glover and Fieldcraft have some good stuff as well, but it's like, sometimes with those kind of products, I feel the companies just put extra stuff in there to justify the price, the retail price. And I don't want to go that route. This is going to the end user. Like, you know, I would maybe use that IFAC in my car, an IFAC like that in my car, but I'm not taking it with me on a deployment. Yeah. Right. And so we went with them, and we had that support from GBRS, who helped us with some other stuff as well. They're just fantastic there. And that's what we took. And we went back over, and we stayed for 17 days on the second trip. And Tommy, actually, when we got there, he stood up a medical platoon.
Oh, nice.
And what happened was we walked in, and it was the same group. And I told those guys, you know, the other thing we got for them was we got them ballistic plates, and we got them uniforms, and we got them plate carriers.
Wow.
And being able to give that stuff to them, man, it was like, you know, you want to talk about getting choked up. It was just cool to be able to give them that kind of gear. Yeah. You know, and
how were they in reception of it?
Oh, they were blown away.
Yeah.
Blown away. I mean, like I said, they had been training with gym shoes and Adidas pants on. Yeah. You know, some of them had uniforms here or there. When we got back, some of them had a little bit more gear. They had more weapons. I mean, that first trip I told you, I'll show you pictures. We had guys with literal sticks off of trees.
Yeah, no, I remember some of the pictures you sent, man. It's crazy.
Just crazy, you know. Yeah. I mean, you couldn't imagine doing a workup using a stick.
The old M-stick teen. Yeah.
So we go, and, you know, I told them, I said, look, I told you we'd be back. Like, I told you, you know, and they had been training, I had wanted to see like how much they had been training. And we had told the colonel before we left, like, get as much help as you can. And if you want to vet help through us, you can, right? Like, don't just get any American that knocks on the door. If you want, we can help you vet people or whatever. So what he did was he kept it in-house. He got the Ukrainian Alphas, which is their version of their tier 1 units. A few guys from there. They got some kind of their special operations intelligence guys, you know, like ground pounders from the intelligence. They do it a little bit different. It's not like a straight S2 shop, kind of like what we have. And then they actually brought in like a professional competition shooter, like Olympic level guy. And then they had been keeping up with the basic tactics that we had showed them.
Was there a stark contrast from when you left to when you came back in any way? And also, did any of the guys that you had been training, had they gone and fought?
They had not gone yet. They would go after the second trip. But on this trip, it was different. They had been training. You could see that they had been training. That was my thing. It was like, you know, same as like every day when Zach and I were there on the first trip, it was like, okay, the morning group, we're going to leave you with this. And we would tell their commanders, we would tell the major or tell the captain, like, hey, make sure they're training this in the afternoon, because they were doing patrols, they were doing training, and then they were, standing post. So they had other stuff they were doing, but I said, I don't care. The guys need to be training. And when we come back in the morning, I'll know if they've been practicing more. Yeah. You know, I'll know if they've put extra time in. It was the same when I left. I said, make sure you guys are training, because I will be back. And if I come back and you guys are a bag of dicks,
I'm going to choke all of you.
There will be hell to pay, right? And I came back, and I mean, they weren't great, but I was impressed, you know. But what had happened was they started to do, when we got there, it's very funny because this has happened all the way through training them, all the way up to the special operations guys that we train now. When you go there, they want to show off and show you kind of like, look what we've been doing, right? Or we added this, or we, you know. And it was all jacked up. It was Tommy's first trip. They were doing these very old Eastern European tactics, like two guys running behind cover, like this table or your table, and they would like lay in the prone and intersect or interlock their legs. And I my first thought was like, is this something off of fucking Avatar? Or like, what are they doing here, you know?
Like an Indian leg wrestling?
It was crazy. Fuck. So, and right away, you know, the alpha guy's kind of standing there. And this guy, incredible guy, we'll call him Andy, he 32 years experience in the Ukrainian Alphas. And you could tell by looking at this guy, you know, and you know, a lot older than me, ton more experience than me. But I just flew 5,000 miles to get here. I'm running this thing, right? Like, or I'll go home, you know. And so there was that little bit of like, who has the biggest dick like in the beginning.
Yeah, and like the FBI and the sheriff on the crime scene.
Yeah, and I whipped mine out really quickly. Not because I wanted to like, you know, put down anything they were doing. It was just like, hey, I get it, but I'm here, right? And so that first day, and then the shooter guy, the professional kind of, and they're nothing against competition shooting. I watched some of those guys, and they're incredible. You know, the guys from SIG or the guys from Glock or whoever, and they're incredible how they do that stuff. But
it's a one-way range.
It doesn't always translate, right? Tactically, it doesn't always translate. And this guy kind of, you know, I was like, all right, we're not doing this. Like, get back online, do this. I want to see this. I want to see that. And that guy never came back. And the alpha guy, after that first day, he never came back because I just took over. But the alpha guy came back, and it was incredible to work with a guy like that. And he actually awarded me like a plaque from the Ukrainian Alphas. And
oh, wow. Do you have a picture of that?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to throw that in there.
Oh, it was crazy. And, you know, he was very into the tactics, very open to us being there. And the intelligence guys, they were fantastic as well, and they've helped us a lot since then too, with some of the kind of behind the scenes stuff we do in Ukraine. So then we started training again, and now they were at the level, Mike, where I could be like, okay, Tommy's going to stand up the medical platoon. And the way he did it was, which was a great idea, he just walked in and he's like, okay, who has any interest in medical shit? And you start to see people kind of being like this. It's like, okay, you guys, and they went and he got them on their medical stuff. And our plan was to integrate the medics back into the tactics, and then to integrate the medical stuff into scenarios.
Oh, okay.
Right? And then I took the rest of the company, and we started working on ambush, counter ambush, more patrolling, more kind of advanced scenarios, breaking contact, and some of this stuff, right? And I have, I can share a bunch of that with you. It was really good. I mean, we went over very basic stuff, linear ambushes, L-shape ambushes, V-shape ambushes, and
circle ambush.
It's the old Irish circle ambush. No offense to Irish people.
No, I'm sure they won't take any offense to that.
And then we did, we had them doing Australian peels and all kinds of stuff. We're throwing all kinds of scenarios at them, and they just worked their butts off. And then we started integrating the medics in there, which was funny. Like the first day, it was like, okay, we're just getting involved in the tactics. And I told the guys, I said, look, when you're not out on the range doing this stuff, you need to be coaching up your guys who are medics who have not done as many reps as you, and get them involved. And they really were. They were like really kind of helping each other. And it just was so funny. And then we started going with scenarios. Okay, now you're the casualty. Get the guy out of there and all this, and continue with the mission. And we had we had one scenario where there was a few casualties, and we're adding confusion in there for them, and as you do in training, and they couldn't figure out how to like buddy carry a guy. And I remember like at our course, you do a lot of stuff with litters, and you're carrying those big heavy dummies and all this kind of stuff. And it's just like, you're doing these big long movements, getting guys out of the area and all this. And, obviously then you end up in a situation, the best way to do it is just pick the dude up and run. And then when I get tired, I hand them to you and you go. And then, you're just passing that off. But it's much easier than trying to, here, you carry a leg and I'll carry an arm and all this. So they're trying to do that, right? They're trying to carry pieces of this guy. And I was getting mad, and I'm pretty fiery during training, as you can imagine. Like, I want stuff done a certain way. I want it with max effort, and I want it with, professional level technique. And I know, but I'm not professional level yet. You're going to be after this, right? Like, you're going to be after we do this 100 times, 200 times. So start now. And that's kind of the expectation I had, again, because I don't have to be there.
Yeah.
And so if I'm there, you're going to work your butt off. And I remember I was maybe like 50 meters away, and you see them and they start talking. It's like any training environment. Guys then start talking to, no, you're not doing this enough, or you're not
start bickering.
Or I have a plan. Oh no, I have a plan. And I just I'm screaming at them, and I just take off over there. And the guy was not the biggest guy in the platoon, but he wasn't the smallest guy either. I should have probably picked my spot a little bit better. I'm running over. I'm like halfway there. I'm like, I'm committed to this now. I can't just run over there and talk to them. So I just ran over there and picked the dude up, picked him up, and took off running. And everybody was like, okay, right? Like, and just kind of showing them some of that stuff. Like, I get it. When I ran off carrying that guy, I mean, I'm in shape, whatever, but like, it's been a long time since I've picked up a dude in gear and ran across a field with him, kind of thing, right? Like, I don't do that.
Yeah.
But you can do that.
Yeah.
I don't care who you are. I don't care where you're at. Like, go die after you've carried him off the field. Like, go lay behind a tree and suck some air and struggle for 10 minutes, and we'll laugh at you, but at least you did that.
Yeah.
And so my point was like, I don't care where you're at. That guy needed to get out of that kill zone, pick him up and get him out of there.
Yeah. Yeah. And so your second trip there, how long were you there for?
Like 17 days, 16, 17 days.
And it was pretty hyper focused on just bringing them up to being able to fight level.
Yeah.
Staying in the same area.
Yeah. Yep. And we added the medical platoon that they had. And then we started some CQB with them, like just a very basic room entry, weapons manipulation, in a building, and how to clear rooms, how to move in a building, just very basic level. I mean, we have a ton of experience in CQB, but like, it's very difficult, right? Yeah. CQB is one of the most difficult things you could do. I had an opportunity to be very like focused on that for a time, and it's one of those things that you can ask any professional who's ever done it. There's a million good ways to do it. You just all need to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And so we started some of that training with them as well at the end. And, they did all the normal stuff, stopping in doorways and tripping over their feet and all this kind of stuff. But they really did a good job, that whole training package that we gave them for that time.
Yeah. Were they kit-wise all rolling with AKs?
Yeah, all AKs.
Anybody rolling with secondaries?
Yeah, they would have Makarov pistols, which no, you're not really rolling with any secondary if you have a Makarov, right? They're terrible.
Yeah,
I mean, you can't even get a purchase on one of those things. They're just terrible.
Was from a weapons and ammo standpoint, were they relatively well outfitted or sufficiently outfitted?
No, they had a bunch of old AKs. No optics, obviously.
But I mean, did they at least had weapons and ammo? Once?
Yeah, at that point they did. Yeah, and they had one magazine each.
Do you know where it was coming from?
I don't.
Yeah. I'm curious. Was there a disparity or a contrast between the first trip and the second trip, resource-wise for you guys, like what you were eating and accommodations, or was it all decent?
It's good. I mean, look, we're really well received there. Yeah. The whole community knows who we are now and what we're doing, and knows what we've done, like to that point. And the support of the people there was just incredible.
Yeah. What did you guys eat?
Oh, so all the kind of traditional Ukrainian food, some of it really good. Some of it, though, like they have this stuff, and oh, please don't light me up in the comments, this stuff called borscht. It's like a beet soup kind of thing.
Just not digging it. See,
you
like haggis, but not borscht.
It's not for me, yeah. It's, but yeah, we always, and it's very strange too. It reminds me a lot of like stuff you've seen in World War II where like there's a war going on, but the town is functioning as well. Yeah. So you can just go to like the bakery or, you can go to the coffee shop. And
so supply wise, like nationally, like there's still supply routes and an ability to still function and food coming in.
At that time, yes. Now it's starting to really drop off because of the kind of the targeted stuff that Russia's doing right now. But at that time, yeah, I mean, they were short, like there were fuel shortages, water shortages. You couldn't take a shower for these 12 hours or whatever it was. Everyone turned all their lights off at night. The whole town's completely pitch black. Yeah. Very creepy.
Any night vision?
Did they have night vision?
Or no. Did they have? Were you guys trying to get to?
Yeah, we were. We're still working some channels to get them night vision. Two problems we're running into is the ITAR stuff on night vision and cost.
Yeah.
Because,
that shit's expensive. And
again, like, okay, I could send over green phosphorus stuff, but like, I don't use green phosphorus stuff. All my night vision's white phosphorus.
Yeah.
How am I going to send over green phosphorus for somebody and then run them through a training package where like, okay, you go in this room, it's dark. You go in the next room, it's light. You're going to have to flip your stuff up.
Yeah.
You or I wouldn't do that. Remember back in the day, we had to do that. It's a nightmare getting washed out all the time. Yeah. But now with the new stuff, you don't get washout. So, it's the same thing with those IFACs. It's like, if we're going to do something, we're going to do it properly. We're going to do it to a very high level and a professional level, especially now with who we're involved with in Ukraine. I don't want to send over cheap stuff.
Yeah. I agree 100%. All right, so on that trip, you get the medical portion integrated. You get them kind of an intermediate. You go home, and then they actually went and fought. Did you have some decent real time intel on what was happening, or how did you kind of?
Yeah, when we went home, a lot of stuff kind of happened. So a bunch of those guys rotated to the front, which was surprising, right? Because they were volunteers, and we just got them to a level where they could actually. They're probably more well-trained at that point because of the work they put in. Sure, we showed them some stuff, but the work they put in, they got themselves to a point where they probably were better trained than the regular Ukrainian army guys at that point. It was very cool. I felt very proud of them for that.
Did you guys come up with, or did they either internally or as it relates to the Ukrainian military, were they like an actual unit that had a name that was different than
I don't know,
fucking Red Devils or something? Like, is there some weird?
I don't know. They
have a unit patch, for Christ's sake, something.
No.
Oh, so you got to get on that.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of them wore our Overwatch patches
that's cool.
on their gear. Yeah. Which was really cool. Yeah. But I mean, yeah, I was proud of them. And then, so with that trip, we came back. So here's what happened. We have some channels that we use to get equipment and things into that country. And it's very sophisticated chain, and it's very cool. And I didn't cultivate it. It kind of happened through some people we have there, but we use it, and it's very cool. That's now part of Overwatch Ukraine. It's this big animal now. It's very cool. I'm very proud of it. But those IFACs on that second trip, we took over in check bags because there was a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And we just took a bunch of extra check bags. I didn't want to send it over in some kind of thing that had to go through customs where I wasn't there, because I didn't want stuff to go missing. And I mean, it's fantastic gear, right? Those IFACs are like $200 each kind of deal. And if you're a, customs officer in this country, that country, or even in Ukraine, you're going to be like,
I'm taking that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, well, the way we got in, we have a couple different ways we get in there, but the way we got in, the airline lost all of our bags.
This is the third time coming in.
No, this was the second time.
Okay.
So on that trip, they lost $100,000 worth of gear. $100,000 plus worth of gear. And so it's like, oh, come on. So they found the majority of it, like 80 grand of it, they found right away, and everything was good. We had that. And then about $20,000 worth of those IFACs was missing for about a month, right? And this is us trying to track it. Now we use all GPS trackers on everything we ever do, right? I mean, I use a GPS tracker everywhere I go now because of this. And
like the Apple AirTags or what?
Yeah, those are fantastic.
Yeah.
And the way you can organize them and everything, they're great. So we had got home, and maybe a week later or 10 days later, I actually had COVID. I just had COVID again, actually. I've had COVID 3 times.
Really?
Yeah, like Scottish people or something. But I had COVID, and I was sick. And then Tommy actually got a call saying that they had found our bag in some shitty little airport in Eastern Europe. The bag was just mysteriously there after a month of trying to find it. And it was like, okay, so we have some options. We can have someone from Ukraine go and get it. We can have them send it to someone in Ukraine. We can have them send it to us. I didn't like any of those ideas because of obvious reasons. So he and I just hopped on a plane and went back to go get it and take it to Ukraine. And we just turned that into our third trip. He did a bunch of medical stuff, and we started getting involved in some more things there with some different groups and all that, that could help on the humanitarian side and help on the military side. And we actually evacuated a family from Ukraine. At that time, I needed to get like 3 people across the border. We needed to leave like within an hour. Something had happened. We had to get within an hour, and I made a couple contacts to, calls to Ukrainian intelligence guys and said, hey, I need a vehicle. I need to get 3 people out of the country, and it needs to be like ASAP. And the guys, the special ops guys there just said, okay, give us an hour. We'll be there. And It was, no problem at the border. These people had some issues with what was going on, and we were able to get them out. And that was our first group that we got out and are now here in the U.S. and starting their life here and all that kind of stuff. So that was the third trip. And then
does Yuri go with you each time?
So Yuri went the first trip. The second trip, he did not go on that third trip.
And actually, before you get into the subsequent trips, when did you first learn that the guys that you had been training had gone and fought?
So it was right after that third trip. Well, it was after the second trip. After the third trip, we started to get some after-action stuff.
Because that's got to be like Bill Belichick's sending his fucking team into the Super Bowl to a certain extent, right?
Yeah, and some of the stories we were hearing back, it was so emotional. I remember there was a Monday morning, and I was actually sitting eating oatmeal, and I got a text on my phone, and it was saying that one of the guys that we had trained was able to save life and limb of his friend because of the training and the tourniquet that we gave him.
Man, that's awesome.
And I'm just sitting there, you know, eating oatmeal.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, okay, now we have to keep this going.
Yeah.
You know, like, this is not just some little training thing and you don't really see where it goes. I mean, we know these guys. We know their families. Like, we know, oh, that guy's the brother of this guy, or his father is this, or, you know, I mean, in one of our platoons, a father and son are fighting together.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's, you know, and now, like, training that we are giving them is saving lives, you know.
Do you know if they've gone and fucking mixed it up hard and kicked some ass? Like,
yeah, I mean, they've been out. Right now, they're actually on a rotation where they go and come back and go and come back, and they've been doing really well. Another guy sent a text, and I mean, I'll show you the text. You know, the guy had said, you know, thanks to that room entry training that we did for a week, you know, that saved my life today.
Wow, man, that's crazy.
And I mean, it's like, first of all, that guy's there fighting for his country. That guy's got a family to worry about. He's got himself to worry about. And he took the time that day to send a text just to say thank you for training.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You know, it's like, he doesn't have to think about me or us or anything like that. It's just, it's so surreal, you know. And again, you know, I've never been on that side of it. Obviously, you know, guys like us, we've done some stuff. We're able to do some stuff with what's going on the last 20 years, and it's different. It's you, but I never was an instructor. You did. You trained guys that went to war, and you've heard, you know, I'm sure, stories of them and some of the things they've done. You know, I'd never had that, so it's like such a crazy experience. Yeah.
I will say there's a double-edged sword to it for sure. I remember, and I'll never forget, you know, Mike Mansour, you know, was a student of mine. He was the first student that was killed in action of mine. And there was a number of them since, but especially the manner with which he died and you know, the circumstances surrounding all of that.
It's incredible.
The gravity felt in putting a student through training and then having that happen is, I mean, it's impossible to explain. I mean, I get fucking choked up even trying to talk about it now, but, you know, going through that experience was, like I said, I really can't even put it into words. I'm struggling to even try, but, but I can certainly see the value and the magnitude, you know, that brings to, you know, to your life. I mean,
and again, this is not what we plan to do. You know, and I don't think you could plan, like, there's so many people that contact me now and they're trying to do what we're doing, but they're trying too hard. They're trying to make it happen.
Yeah. It's kind of like trying to get laid.
I
just got to let it happen.
You just have to let it happen. And I mean, with us, it's like, you can't replicate what we've done. It's so unique to obviously having Yuri and having these resources of in country, right? Yeah. I mean, people just literally say, like, hey, can you just connect me into your network? And it's like,
it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work like that. Yeah. And I mean, it's like, you know, and I get it. It is our baby. We're protective of it, and we're protective of the guys that are in it from here to there, you know. So there is that aspect of it. There is the aspect of it's mine, fuck off, right? There is that. Yeah. But at the same time, it's like, it just, even if I did plug you in, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work for you.
Yeah. You know, I mean, obviously a totally different context. I get that sometimes, like with the dog connections over in Europe, like, hey, can you hook me up with where you buy your dogs from? I'm like, no.
Right.
You know, like first of all, no. But second of all, kind of same thing. Like, these are guys that I've known for 15, 20 fucking years and have done business with for a long time. Like, I've had breakfast in their kitchens, you know. And
I mean, when they give you a dog now, it's much different than when they gave you a dog that first or fifth time.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, it's a grown and you know, groomed relationship over, you know, years and years and years of time. We've spent time together, and I mean, it's like, it just, like you said, it just doesn't work that way, you know, but,
and we've had a lot of guys, like, who I say are capable, like, guys from our backgrounds that have knocked on the door.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, like, 'cause you're not doing it for the reasons we're doing it.
Yeah.
You know, and and it's a very tricky thing because I always go back to that thought of like the more help, more better. But like,
well, yeah, I was going to ask, I mean, how do you kind of navigate that? Like, do you take it where it's case by case, or do you have like if you're willing to join in and help, great. If you want.
Yeah. So now, like, for instance, we're not really trying to partner with a lot of other organizations, right? Number one, the other, I'll say, good organizations that are getting stuff done, they don't really need us.
Yeah.
Number two, we know who they are. They know who we are. But they don't really need us. We don't really need them. So if you're trying to come in and we don't know who you are, you're just trying to piggyback off what we're doing, or you're trying to get your start and doing whatever your mission is, which I don't even know. As far as like bringing guys onto our task force teams, we have a way of vetting those guys. We have a roster now of about 17 guys.
Oh, nice.
From all over, right? You know, SEALs, we have guys from former Dev Group all the way to MARSOC, to Recon guys and you know, Green Berets and Rangers. We have the whole gamut. SARCs, but we vet them, you know.
Is that something where you're kind of always looking to add? Like if people are listening, should they reach out? And
yeah, go to the website. There's an intake form on a volunteer side and on the task force side. And, you know, we ask for certain things. There's certain drop downs where if you don't have that kind of background, you're not going to get through the intake form. But yeah, I mean, we've had everything from, like I said, tier 1 level guys come in and kind of connect with us and you know, all kinds of high level guys, down to the guy who says like, hey, I never served, but my grandfather was in Vietnam, and even though I never even met him, I feel a strong connection to his service. Can I come and join your team?
Yeah.
It's like, man, look, I appreciate that, but
you need a specific skill set.
Yeah. And look, we probably, you know, God willing, we can grow this thing to be something really big. We're very small.
Yeah.
We're very, very small, and you know, we do need funding, and we're looking to do some stuff, and we'll need volunteers for all kinds of different roles and all kinds of different stuff. But if you want to talk about like jumping headfirst into a hurricane, or you know, going to Ukraine or to Asia where we're looking now, or Africa, or some of the other stuff we're doing kind of behind the scenes, you have to have that background. Like there's no, we can't bend on it.
Yeah. Or, you know, donations and funding accomplish the same goal.
Yeah. There's many ways to contribute to what we're doing. Yeah.
I'm sure you know, if you're an IT guy, or, you know, there's some logistics piece that you can offer that, you know, that, again, like they're all necessary, equally necessary. All right. So that third trip kind of encompassed, you know, what you talked about in terms of the baggage and stuff. How long were you home in between trip 3 and trip 4?
I want to say a month or two. I'd have to go back and think. Dates always mess with my head. Even though it wasn't that long ago. A month or two, let's say.
Yeah. And what was the goal in that time, and then going back?
The goal of that one was we sent was primarily medical training. You know, obviously the medical piece is very important there. They really need help learning trauma medicine, right? Like combat trauma medicine. So much so that Tommy has went over and he's trained their actual ER surgeons in regular hospitals on gunshot. Yeah, it's so funny. He got at, like, the director of this hospital comes in. Like, a hospital director is a big deal.
Yeah.
He comes in and he says, like, hey, can you guys do some stuff for my surgeons? Okay, well, tell us more. Like, what do you want? And so he's asking about trauma medicine for the surgeons, because those guys aren't used to seeing that kind of stuff, right? I mean, if you're an ER surgeon, you see ER surgeon type stuff. Now they're dealing with like war casualties and all this. And Tommy was like, that's not my thing. Like, I'm not a surgeon, right? Like, I get it. I'm this like military medical kind of wizard guy, but like, I'm not that. And it's like, you fucking are now, right? And so, so he's in front of an auditorium full of surgeons teaching them stuff.
Dude, that's crazy.
It's unbelievable. Yeah. And he's so good, man. He's so good. Like, he has all the nasopharyngeal stuff, sticking it up dudes' noses, and like, actually, like, hey, lay down on the table. This is going right up your schnoz, you know, and chest decompression stuff. He's getting into some really good, like beyond the regular buddy aid type stuff with these soldiers and with these special operations guys. So on that trip was when we, the fourth trip was when we started really working with the special operations guys. You know,
Training their guys.
Yeah. I mean, they had been working with us. They had been connected to us. They had been picking some stuff up, but now it's like, hey, we need you guys to come and train our teams. Right.
What was that like?
It's pretty cool. I mean, you know, those guys, they're the best Ukraine has. They're nowhere near the best we have. But they're good. And one of the, you know, groups is called Cord, and they're kind of like Ukraine's high level hostage rescue type team. And obviously it's wartime now. They're tasked with a little bit of a different mission. So some of their skill set, some of their training doesn't really fit. And on the medical side, you know, they need a lot of help. So that was the primary thing there. We took over a 18 Delta Ranger guy, and Tommy went over again, and it was heavily medical training there for those guys. And then at this point too, by the fourth trip, we really now have a pretty cool network to the front lines to supply them with gear, supply them with just other supplies and materials that they need, you know, at the front. And you're talking everything. We supply everything from drones to optics to, you know, kind of like your night vision scopes, not anything like helmet mounted, but just kind of like old Starlight scopes that, like, if you're in a defensive position, that you can use to see what's going on. So some kind of thermal type night vision capabilities that we're able to get in there now. And then, you know, tactical gear we're getting for guys as well.
Are you guys using a lot of manufacturers on the tactical side, or are certain ones like partnering with you to help?
So another thing that we benefit from, it's kind of both. We have some partners that we're working with. Obviously, you know, there are guys like GBRS that have helped us. And by the way, their gear is fantastic. That gun belt they have, and again, those guys don't pay me. Maybe they should start paying me. But that gun belt they have, I wish I had that when I was out doing my thing. Yeah. I mean, it's the best gun belt I've ever. Their sling is fantastic. So they've been able to help with a bunch of stuff. And one way we benefit too is, and this happened after I was on Sean Ryan's show, and Sean's been such a huge supporter, you know, not only of our organization, but of me. Like he always checks in with me. You know, he's a good friend, and he's just an incredible human. Yeah. And he's helped us get our message out so well. And people have donated incredible amounts of gear. There was a ATF unit here in Texas that switched all their gear from multicam to black, and they just gave us all their multicam stuff. Oh. I mean, everything, chest rigs and mag pouches. I mean, you name it, backpacks, and they just sent it. It showed up, and it's like, okay,
that's incredible.
And we've had things like that all the way down to like a guy sending an email in and being like, hey, I want to donate my personal plate carrier, and just make sure it gets to a guy. It's like, we'll make sure we hand it to a guy. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not getting sent. When you give us something, or we take gear, like whether you give us $1 or you give us your chest rig, it doesn't go and sit in some warehouse in some country and some guy might take it to Ukraine. We take it and we hand it to a dude that's there.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You know, I mean, and we'll always do that. And it's very difficult to do it, and it's difficult to scale that. We've scaled it a couple of times. But to me, it's like, look, whether you give me money from your pocket or gear from your basement, that's important. Mm-hmm. You know, and it's like, it's my responsibility. I'm the steward of that, and I'm not going to be that guy. And I know how it works right now. I know there are people, whether it's Poland, Romania, wherever you're sending stuff, and it's just sitting in warehouses, and you think you've done a thing, and you have, and between you and God, you have, but that thing's not getting to the end user.
Yeah.
And the end user is the one who needs it. I mean, I was there and saw those. We just sent over in total 60 or 3,000 pairs of boots we just sent over.
Wow.
You know, and it's like, doesn't sound like a lot, doesn't sound like a big deal, boots, but like winter's coming in Ukraine and these guys don't have boots. I was there when those guys were standing there with Adidas, you know, gym shoes on.
Yeah.
And it's like they need this gear. And that's not sitting in a warehouse somewhere.
Yeah.
That goes from us to the end user.
Yeah. Are there any American tactical gear companies that are doing a good job working with you guys, or?
It's difficult because, and I understand it, right? Like margins right now, especially in that kind of thing, it's difficult. It's hard for some of these smaller companies to just give us stuff, you know? I'm always looking to kind of improve that side of things because I would like to be able to partner with a company and give. Predator Armor has been fantastic with us.
Or even giving you like bro deals. I mean, discounted.
Yeah. I mean, we're getting a lot of that, and if you are a company out there that wants to work with us, and look, your stuff will go to the end user. Like it will. It's not going to some other. It's not a wholesale retail account where I'm selling it to civilians or anything like that. It's going to guys, and there's going to be pictures of those dudes in Ukraine using that stuff on the front. Yeah. You know, because we have this channel to get it right there, and we don't talk too much about all of the units we work with on the front. You know, there's a lot of controversy over different groups over there and who does what. I'm not involved in any of that. What I'm saying is I get it to the end user, and I get it to the guys who are fighting. Yeah. It's not guys that are sitting in the rear, you know, with all this fancy gear, not doing anything, manning, you know, road checkpoints or something in a town. And so, hey, if these guys or those guys are the guys at the front, that's who we have the gear to. And I don't really care about anyone's politics around that or what anyone thinks. I mean, and there's a lot of talk right now about, you know, and I've seen it in all kinds of different venues and comments and stuff about different anti-Semitic groups in Ukraine and all that. Remember, I'm the Jewish guy. Like I'm the Ukraine guy, and I'm there doing it with these people, and I haven't seen any of that.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it, right?
Yeah.
I've just seen guys that are trying to defend their country from an invading force. I know their country's corrupt. I know their politics are corrupt.
So are ours.
Yeah, and,
and
here's the deal. I'm not in this for Ukraine. I don't support Ukraine or not support Ukraine. I'm there for those people, right? Because we have a connection to those people, and they're doing that job. And I've done that job. It's a difficult job. It's a hell of a responsibility, and it's not easy. Yeah. And I don't care about the politics. I don't care about that country. I care about the people.
Yeah. You mentioned that fourth trip you were working with the soft units, the Cord.
Cord, yeah.
Are they better outfitted, I'm assuming? Like,
oh, Mike, they have too much gear. Yeah. They have gear where, like,
they don't even know how to use it.
Well, I'll show you pictures, and you'll be like, what the hell are they, like, how do they get through a doorway? Yeah. You know, and it's one of those things where, like, with me, and we were meticulous about this, and I know you probably were too, it's like, if something got attached to me, it had a purpose.
Oh, it had a crucial purpose.
And I could tell you why. Yeah. And it doesn't mean you have to put your stuff where I put my stuff, but I can tell you my why for every single thing I do, right?
Yeah, no, yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, I tried to stay as streamlined as possible, you know.
Oh, these guys, I'll show you pictures. They got stuff hanging off. Yeah. They got pouches hanging off of pouches, you know. And
looks like they covered themselves in fucking Velcro and rolled through a supply gear house or gear warehouse.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I think that's, you know, it's the same in any military, in our military. I mean, the units that are the cool guy units get more money and more, you have to spend that money on something, and most of the time it goes into stuff that you don't even use, right? And I think that's kind of the case there. Yeah. You know, it's very funny, but yeah, that's the part. It's like, take your whole fucking plate carrier off, like, you know, like.
That's funny. So you mentioned drones being one of the things that you guys supply. I've seen some pretty gnarly video footage of drones being used to attack Russian convoys and stuff. Do you know if that's? I mean, do you have any way of knowing if that's part of what they're using shit for?
I mean, yeah, they're using the drones every day on the front line. Yeah. A lot of what they use is it's observation.
Right? I suppose if you give them 10 and the next day they're like, hey, we need 10 more of those. You're like, oh, where'd they go?
And, you know, the drone stuff, it's important for them because they're fighting in like trenches. And I mean, I kid you not, trenches, like
World War I.
World War
fucking,
One.
yeah.
It's so weird. And number one, don't fight in trenches, right? It's a bad idea. It was a bad idea then. It's a bad idea now. It's a bad idea if you do it 10 years from now. Don't fight in trenches. But that's what they're doing. And so they're using these drones a lot for observation. We got involved in a big operation to locate a Marine Scout sniper captain who is MIA in Ukraine.
An American Marine?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
He was fighting with the Foreign Legion. I'm not going to mention his name just because I haven't kind of cleared this with any of the people involved, but
He's still missing?
Still missing. We worked a lot with the guys that he was with in his Legion unit, guys that know him and had served with him, family, State Department, active Marine Corps, which, you know, there are some people sympathetic to this situation that are on active duty that are helping with assets. I'm not going to get into that. Obviously, I don't want to get anybody in trouble. Yeah. We can talk offline about some of those details, but he went missing, and I've seen all the ATAC, like satellite footage and video, and have recordings of the after action interviews of guys that were in the engagement and all this kind of stuff. And they were out doing like a reconnaissance mission. They've been using these guys, the Foreign Legion guys, and I have no connection to the Foreign Legion. We do a little bit through the Ministry of Defense as far as like, I can help you get to the Foreign Legion if someone's interested. And through the different defense attaches and diplomats that we are connected with and work with in Ukraine. But that's it. I don't have any other connection operationally to the Ukrainian Foreign Legion. But they're taking these guys that have experience and kind of using them, or they were. Now they're kind of shelving everybody for some of the reasons we talked about earlier. But they're taking these guys and giving them missions, like reconnaissance type missions, to kind of go forward and you know, they have the balls and the experience to go forward and observe, and as well as going on to like major kind of, not really supply routes, but more like game trails that the Russians are using and have created, and planting anti-armor mines, anti-tank mines. So he was on a patrol, reconnaissance patrol, and they started taking small arms and indirect fire. And, you know, at first he was reported KIA, but now he's missing. There was a bunch of confusion there. And what seems to me, in my opinion, and I'll say it here, because it's just my opinion. So if there's any family or anybody watching, this is literally just my opinion. My opinion is he either was wounded, crawled off the X, or got off the X, and then is somewhere in got cover and succumbed to his wounds, which is a whole other story. Or he's was taken POW and is in the that big prison camp that they have that's like 600 or 800 people strong. You know, my spidey sense says if the Russians had a former Marine Corps scout sniper captain in captivity, they probably would be parading him a little bit. It's more likely that he crawled off the X and got to a place that he could take cover and succumb to his wounds. They found his rifle. They found some of his gear. You know, again, it's a very well documented. Like behind the scenes, it's very well documented. We have all kinds of pictures, videos, ATAC images, all kinds of stuff. And my whole thing now, I hope to God he is in that prison camp and he's doing okay and he's going to get home. If not, I mean, and we used all our resources in Ukraine to try and go there. The problem is it's very difficult to get to that spot. You know, even with the we know exactly where this engagement happened, and we could set up a way to try and find him, but it's still occupied area. There's still a lot going on there, so you can't just go in there and look. But if we find him, you know, I made a commitment to the group that we'll go get him. And even if it's his remains, I'll go get him and bring him back, you know, because, and I don't know the guy, but in this investigation and helping out. And we got involved because of the resources we have in Ukraine and the guys that we could try and get to that area, or the intel that we could get from that area from the guys. And just through learning that, like, they don't really, not they as in the Ukrainians, but like just that area of the world, they don't really care about going in and getting their fallen like we do, you know, and our country's always done an incredible job of that, even to the point to where the times where we haven't been able to do it, or guys that fell through the cracks, we have a shrine for those guys, and we guard it, and it's sacred, you know, and other parts of the world don't do that. And so when you hear about us doing that, and this could be in this situation to a guy who, you know, people say what they want about the Foreign Legion and how, you know, you could get warmongers there, you get guys that are going there for the paycheck. That might be so, but those guys are putting their lives on the line to help other people. Yeah. And at the end of the day, that's what it is. And I mean, I don't know, you should get a freaking paycheck for that, I think. Yeah. And regardless of all of that, that guy is an American Marine, an officer, doing what I think is an admirable thing. And, you know, we can't have him laying in a field somewhere in a far off land and not be working to get him back. So it's been unsuccessful so far. It would be nice if, you know, and our Ukrainian guys have done a good job of helping. But it's just right now too hard to get to that area and actually be able to do anything actionable there for a recovery type mission, you know, to see if he's even there. So, but yeah, I mean, through kind of all of that, my commitment is even if we find him there in whatever condition, we'll bring him back.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. So that wrapped up the fourth trip. You come home and then.
Yeah. And then, so we came home and it was like, you know, everybody came home and we kind of like, okay, we always run into that problem of we need money, right? So it was, let's try and raise 50 grand. And look, I don't know how to raise money. I've never done this before. Now we're a 501c3, so we have this cool thing where I can dangle a tax write-off in front of you if you're a business or an individual that needs that kind of thing or wants that kind of thing and wants to get involved because of that. But I don't know how to raise money. That's not my game, right? We're trying to build a team to help with some of that stuff. We're trying to learn the ropes. Remember, we didn't have, again, I go back to, we didn't have a plan for this. We're learning everything as it comes. So I was like, let's just try and crowdsource. I mean, when we went to that first hurricane we talked about, we were on the way making Instagram posts and text messages for a GoFundMe account. Same thing when we went to Ukraine the first time. We're just kind of crowdsourcing this. And because we have such a big network with in Jiu-Jitsu and in the veteran community, people were just kind of like, it was all basically done on here's $10, here's $100, here's $1,000. And it's just kind of, we don't have any huge partners other than this guy who has been helping us through the other 501c3. And I called him and I said, hey, his name's Mike. I said, Mike, you know, here's what we've been doing. Because I always check in with him because he's a massive supporter. He gave us $100,000. I check in with him and tell him what we're doing to show him that, like, you know, your money's, we're stretching it. And he says, so what are you guys doing now? I'm like, we're trying to raise $50,000. Trying to do this little kind of campaign thing or whatever it was. And I can't remember how much our campaign actually brought in. He goes, well, hey, I'll double that for you.
Oh, shit.
And I was like,
this is after the original $100,000?
Yes.
Wow. And
so I was like, okay, like, you know, like so appreciative to that. And it was the same thing, you know, the medical gear. So I called Cole again and we did that. I mean, if you see Cole riding around a new Ferrari, you know, no, I mean, like I said, and he was great again, you know, he came through and, you know, he takes all the kind of logistics off of my head and just the stuff just shows up and it's fantastic. And look, people say, yeah, but you know, you're paying for that kind of stuff. Well, yeah, but look at what those guys do, right? They give back to Gold Star families. The product that we buy from comes from a veteran-owned company. It's like there's so many cool kind of roles to that. Like it's helping our guys. We're a nonprofit. We're veteran-owned. It's, you know, we're using GBRS, who's a veteran-owned company that does so much for Gold Star families through everything that they do, and then also it's supporting a product that's made by veterans.
Yeah.
You know, that's
I
kind
don't
of
know how you shit on that.
I mean, that's what I'm trying to do with everything we do.
Yeah.
You know, like I would rather have that trickle down thing in every aspect of everything that we do at Overwatch, because that's just, it's like multiplying the benefit to people. So, so he helped out with that again. We had our gear, and then this time you know, because of some of the success, we were having in the field and at the front with our guys, the cord guys wanted tactical training. So we sent over Rod Strube, who's a 3rd Battalion Recon guy. He went over and started doing a bunch of tactical stuff with those guys. And it was so cool working with Rob because, well, on that trip initially, we had all this gear again. We didn't want to check bags after the fucking last fiasco with losing $100,000 worth of that, just the headache that caused. And thank goodness we got all that back and all that stuff was used and all that. So I said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to send mules. We're going to take a team of guys that are literally just going to fly to where we fly to and
drop the shit off.
Yeah. Maybe have a good night, drink some whiskey, whatever, meet with the team. We'll link up with our team. I had a bunch of meetings with people in that country, for some stuff that we were doing, and turn around and fly back. And that's what we did. And we had, you know, again, we used all Overwatch guys. It was mainly all Recon and Army guys. The medical guys went, you know, and it was like, even the guys that were going in country and staying in country for, that was 2 weeks. It's like, hey, you got a cargo pocket?
Yeah.
You know, your jacket, you got a pocket open in your jacket. I mean, it was so crazy, right? I mean, we should start doing it with cocaine. We'd be able to raise more money. But, yeah, so we did that. And, you know, again, it's just, these guys will, you know, we had a guy, Justin Vickery, who is a 3rd Battalion Recon guy. He flew from Arizona, stopped in at Chicago, flew to Eastern Europe, and turned around and came right home.
Wow. I mean, from a cost standpoint, is it still not, or is it cost prohibitive to like charter a private jet and just pack it with fucking stuff and a couple of dudes to
so
go
right
over?
now we're not at that level. That's the goal. That would be the best bang for the buck for us. We just don't have the buck, right? Yeah. I know there are other groups doing that. You know, I believe Chad does that. And I need to connect with him because I need to know, I need to pick his brain on some of that logistical stuff. Like, how do you not give me your line, right? I don't, you know, I'm not asking for that, but like the how, right? Because he's obviously done it and he's incredible.
I mean, to me, I would start with, you know, the chartering services and just reach out to them direct, say, hey, here's what we're trying to accomplish. We're not a family of 6 trying to take a vacation, you know.
Yeah, our problem with that too is, especially now, is like, again, I've done the math. That's the most bang for the buck for us. That's the most efficient. We just don't have the buck.
Yeah, I just mean, you know, if you find the right group, they may do some kind of like cost.
Yeah, and if there's anybody out there that has either that kind of service or has a plane and wants to get involved, I mean, we have some ideas now. We're trying to talk to a couple of pilots. But again, it's like they can fly, but then how do you get the plane and do some of this stuff? So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of where we're trying to move to, because, I mean, look, here's what happened. Again, we got the $100,000. We got the incredible gear and the support to get, and it wasn't just that medical gear we got. We had a bunch of other gear that we had that was going to go over as well. You know, important gear, tactical gear, and different stuff on the humanitarian side, and we didn't have any money to get everyone there. Yeah. So like right now, that whole 5th trip, you know, and to put the timeline into perspective, when Hurricane Ian came, we had guys leave Ukraine and go straight to the hurricane. So like that's the time frame of the 5th trip. It's not so long ago, right? Yeah. A few weeks ago. I literally put all of the airfare, and it's like upwards of like for the last however many trips on my personal credit card. It's like $20,000 or something. Yeah. because it's like, okay, if 20 grand on my credit card, not doing that stops us being able to participate and make the impact that we're making. Like, no, I'll figure that out later. Right. Yeah. Like we'll figure that out, because I believe what we're doing is a good thing. And I know people support us. I know more people will support us. And I believe in what we're doing. So, I'd rather put my neck on the line for the guys, and it all stops with me anyway. I remember going on the very first hurricane, and I told the guys, I said, look, if we'll try and raise money like PayPal and all of this, but if nobody gives us a dime, I'm not going to ask you guys for anything. I'll put it all on my credit card. Just give me your effort.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Like it starts and ends with me. And, these guys trust me. I mean, at the last Hurricane Ian, the same guy, Justin, we got tasked by the Recon Sniper Foundation to go and help somebody down there. And he was like, he had COVID. He had 104 fever. He's in Arizona. We're going to Fort Myers, Florida. And he's like, hey, man, get me a red-eye flight. I'll be there. And he's not getting paid.
Yeah.
It's just, that's the level of guy we have. And the trust I can have in them and the trust they have in me. And, when you have that and you have those kind of guys, I mean, we're doing ridiculous stuff with the group we have. It's really amazing to be a part of it. And,
Yeah, no, I mean, it's an impressive story. It's an amazing crew, and I love what you're doing. I think it's awesome, man. I am curious on the Ukraine specific front. Like, at this point, it's pretty public who you are, what you're doing, what you're involved with, and kind of what your connections are. Is there any level of concern on your end from a personal security standpoint that, there may be Russian, not forces, but, Russian anything, whether it's agents or sympathizers or whatever, that may look at you and be like, this fucking guy is aiding and abetting our enemy. Let's fuck with him or take him out? Or has that thought even crossed your mind?
Yeah. I mean, we do a lot of stuff. Like, for instance, when we're moving through Europe, especially moving through Eastern Europe, we do a lot of stuff to protect ourselves.
I mean, here though.
Yeah, here I do the same thing here, but like, I'm personally not worried. Yeah. I mean, I understand if you want to say Russian intelligence services are probably a little bit better than their military is, but I'm not worried. Like, I mean, if someone, whether it's someone Russian or anyone wants to come after me, they can come after me, right? I mean, I'm not worried about it.
I guess, by worry, I mean, like, have you changed your behavior or implemented any extra or excess security protocols into your life?
We've a few of us, especially the ones that have kind of been a little more forward in the media, have kind of upped our game on that kind of stuff. Yeah. I mean, you have to, and that's what you're taught to do and trained to do. And part of that is a little more effort for me now. And that's why I wanted to the whole time kind of just be in the dark with not coming and seeing you or going to see Sean or any of those kind of things. But at the same time, it's like, you have to get out there. You have to tell the story. You have to, try and raise money, because we can't do anything without donations. We are a 501c3. You know what that's like. There's all kinds of restrictions. I mean, when we didn't have it for a while, we were trying to put plans in places to where we could, piggyback off of someone or get some help raising money. And so there's all kinds of stuff there. So the best way to do it is get out and try and tell your story. I mean, and I believe in our story. I think our story's it's an incredible thing. What Yuri's done for his own country it's unbelievable. Yeah. And he won't tell you that, and he won't act like that. But I mean, I don't even know if he understands it yet. But again, it's like, okay, I have to get out there, and if I have to dot a couple more I's and cross a couple more T's on the personal side because of that, that's okay.
Yeah. I think it's amazing and incredibly admirable what you have going on. I'm impressed, super proud of you, and honored to know you. What's next for you guys?
Yeah, so we did the hurricane down in Florida, and now we're kind of We have our second family that we've relocated over to the U.S. They're just getting settled in now. That's another thing too. Like, I'm registering everyone else's kids into schools and like all this weird stuff that it's not just the cool guy stuff, right? It's not the running around Ukraine. So we're trying to do all this other stuff. We have plans to do stuff in Southeast Asia. We've already done like a scouting kind of mission there to see what we can do and where we can do it. There's some stuff on the table there. Africa is a big thing. We want to get involved in Africa. There's so much going on there, you know.
From an organization standpoint, do you have an ideal or a goal to get to from, you know, whether it's numbers of people involved, or is there kind of a 5 or 10 or 20-year plan?
Yeah, at the moment, our first kind of objective is to get to where kind of our core people can do this full time. I mean, we're doing this part time.
Yeah.
And you know, it's a lot of work, and we don't take a dime from it. You know, I mean, I have tried to take care of the guys that put the effort in and take time away from their families for weeks at a time to go to Ukraine, especially, or to jump into a hurricane. And, you know, hey, if you're gone for a couple of weeks and we can give you a couple $1,000s for your trouble, like, we're trying to do that, right? But we don't take, you know, I don't have a salary from Overwatch, you know, and the other co-founders and our core guys don't. You know, I want to be able to do that, especially for the veteran guys, for the former operators, because one thing I've noticed as well, not that they can all work full time, but I want us to be a full-time organization, because one of the most bonus things I've seen out of this, Mike, is what it does for the veterans that work with us.
It's the sense of purpose. You know?
It gives that purpose, and it's like a fire. It's like a spark lit up in them again. You know, like Rob was over there on the 5th trip training tactics to the Cord guys, and they have, you know, working with their dogs and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, you just see him. He's like, man, I could do this every day.
So getting the band back together.
And I never expected that.
Yeah.
Like, I never expected to see these guys light up and see them get out of it what they do, you know, and it's kind of cool to see that. And, you know, I got something out of it always, you know, because I understand what we've been doing, and I think it's cool to get these guys doing this stuff, but then to see it on their end and hear it from them, it's like, it's such a bonus, and it's such a help to, you know, guys that have had that kind of history. I mean, look, I struggled with my history. We talked about it a little bit, you know. I mean, many people have. Tons of people have sat down with you and outlined their stories of that. And it is such a difficult thing. And, you know, not saying that this is the cure for everybody. Like, hey, if you're a former whatever and you're having issues, sign up for Overwatch. That's not the case. But it's like, if you come in and you align with our mission, you start working with us, you're going to get a lot of reward out of it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, to me, we've talked about this on a number of episodes, but, you know, the age old question, what is the meaning of life? You know, to me, it's a 1-word short answer, and that's purpose.
Yeah.
And that's it. You know, it doesn't have anything to do with money or, you know, fame, fortune, what status, whatever. It's 100% is that if you feel purposeful, you will be happy, you know, no matter what that is. You know?
Yeah. And it's so crazy. Like, you know, if you and I sat down and tried to plan this, we wouldn't be able to. Yeah. The fact that it's just happened so organically, and what we're seeing spit out the other end of it, you know, the benefit and the impact, it's like, we have to keep going.
Yeah. I think most, not all, but most good things happen that way.
Yeah.
You know, some things are planned out and very calculated, but most things kind of fall into place how they're supposed to, when they're supposed to, and ultimately why they're supposed to in that same manner.
Yeah, and the cool thing is, like, with our guys, we can do anything. Like, we, you know, I sat down and talked with local and or state and federal law enforcement over the issues with human trafficking, you know, and I mean, it's crazy to me once I started studying that and seeing just how prevalent it is and how kind of just sick it is and how rampant it is. And you know, you sit down and you talk to these people, and God bless them, they just, it's a manpower issue. Like, hey, we're set up, we do our, if you're talking on the law enforcement, and we do our patrols, our guys are union, we can't have them work over, and we just can't, like in our terms, they don't have the manpower or the bandwidth to build these target packages to go after these kind of people. It's just too difficult. And it's like, I got guys that could build target packages for you, and I know there are some other organizations on a nonprofit level that are involved in that kind of thing. But like, imagine asking a bunch of former guys, a bunch of cool guys, like, hey, you want to get involved and help stop human trafficking and child trafficking and all that.
Absolutely.
Roger up for that, and you want to talk about purpose there. And,
is that something you guys are looking to get into? Yeah,
we're kind of in the skeletal stages of putting some stuff together. Again, like with us right now, it's all funding, right? Yeah. Like if $1 million fell out of the sky, we'd spend 1.2 million. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of what we're doing. And I don't want to be, and I'm not knocking on anybody else, but I don't want to be like the Red Cross that if you look up their numbers, it's like 13 cents of every dollar goes to the mission. And look, that's not a knock on the Red Cross. They raise so much money that 13 cents on a dollar is a massive impact. Yeah. They just have a massive infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, that's the tricky part with nonprofits. The bigger you get, the more it becomes like a corporation, and to be able to run it both, not just efficiently, not even that efficiently, to be able to run it competently for the long term. Like you can, and it's the same way with business, right? Is that when you're first starting out, you can bootstrap and do shit out of your house and, or out of your garage or whatever, and guys are doing shit on spare time. But in every case, business, nonprofit, whatever, you'll reach a certain level where you have to carve out a significant portion, and that's kind of an irony. I mean, I've learned that in business is that the bigger you grow, the harder it is to maintain your margins. Like the bigger you get, the more your margins actually go down.
So for us, like number one, we're nowhere close to those problems. Because we just, we're nowhere near there. But we're still at the point where like I said, you give me $10, I'm going to spend 12, and I'm going to throw in the extra $2. But like right now we're at the point, it's kind of backwards where we don't have the money we need. Like the money we have doesn't match to the capability we have and the connections we have. And, like most people could maybe raise a bunch of money, but they can't really get in and do. And they can't have the same impact in Ukraine because they don't have that network, they don't have that infrastructure that's been built. Yeah. Where like we have the opposite. We have the pipe, we just don't have any water to run through the pipe, or we don't have a lot of water to run through the pipe. So we're learning, and we'll figure it out. I mean, we figured everything else out. We'll figure that piece out. We just, we're looking for that. That's kind of the next piece is, and my time crunch on it in my own head is I don't want to waste the opportunities that we have.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So speaking of which, where can people go to support you guys?
Yeah, so obviously, you can reach out to me personally. I'm on Instagram. It's Mark Turner BJJ. The Overwatch Foundation on Instagram is at the Overwatch Foundation, and then the website's overwatchfoundationusa.org.
Awesome. You guys, please check out his organization and support it if you can. Anything else that you want to bring up before we wrap up?
No, just for you. Thank you for, like I said at the top of the show, thanks for everything. Obviously, you've helped me a ton with my dog and just everything, just being a friend. And, I appreciate our chats and you always have time for me and for what we're doing and just to bounce ideas off and all that. So thanks for everything.
It's an honor and a pleasure for sure. I mean, I feel lucky to know you and I'm happy to do it. So again, I want to thank you for coming, for sharing your story. It's an amazing one. You've lived a super interesting and spectacular life, man. It's a really cool story to hear, and I could talk to you for a lot longer about it. But thanks again for coming. I hope you guys appreciated it. Please, again, check out his organization. If you didn't enjoy it, I know you know to go choke yourself. And until next time, this is Mic Drop.